Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the November 16th, 2023 California Board of Behavioral Sciences meeting. My name is Chris Jones. I'm chairperson of the board. Before we convene, I would like to remind everyone present that the board is a consumer protection agency charged with administering and enforcing the board's laws. Where protection of the public is inconsistent with other interests sought to be promoted, the protection of the public shall be paramount. The Board of Behavioral Sciences will be holding this public meeting in person and via WebEx platform. I will announce when we are accepting public comment on the various issues. For each public comment period, we will first be accepting comments from the participants in the audience present in the room. Then the moderator will open the lines as appropriate so that the remote audience members can comment. Each commenter will have 2 minutes to comment. Moderator, would you please provide the audience instructions on how they may participate during the meeting at the appropriate times?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before we get started, I would like to remind board members and staff who are not speaking to mute their microphones during today's meeting. If background noise is detected as a result of unmuted microphones, I will mute those microphones. There are members of the public in the audience, and meeting minutes are being taken. So we ask that members and staff please identify themselves before speaking. For the purposes of today's meeting, when the chair opens for public comment, members of the public who would like to provide public comment at our DCA headquarters location in Sacramento can approach the table and microphone at the front of the room. For those joining us on WebEx, we will be utilizing the hand raise feature to facilitate public comment. When public comment is called, members of the public who wish to make a comment can raise their hand by clicking on the hand icon next to their name, or if they have called into the meeting, they can press *3. And we will display instructions during public comment time. And with that, I return the floor back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Members, during the roll call, please introduce yourself and let the public know whether you are a public or licensed member. Christina, can you please call roll to establish a quorum?
Good morning.
Morning.
Eleanor Uribe,
Present, licensed clinical social worker.
Abigail Ortega,
Present LCSW member.
Justin Huft,
Present LMFT member.
Christopher Jones,
Present LEP member and board chair.
Wendy Strack,
Wendy Strack, public member, board vice chair.
Susan Friedman,
Present, public member.
Nicholas Boyd,
Present, licensed professional clinical counselor.
Yvette Caceres Willis,
Present public member.
Dr. Annette Walker,
Present, public board member, pronouns she, her, and hers.
and through WebEx, we have Kelly Ranasinghe,
Present, public member, pronouns he, him.
and for today, we have Amy Eng absent, John Sovek absent. We have a quorum.
Thank you so much. Before we begin, I would like to remind all speakers to remain on topic when making comments on the agenda items. This is going to be a full 2 days. I want to make sure that we can get through every agenda item. Additionally, we'll be taking a lunch break around 11:30. This will be depending on where we are with the hearings. So we're going to move to item number 2, suggestions for future agenda items. Are there any future agenda items suggestions from our board members? Okay. Are there any members of the audience that would like to suggest future agenda items? All right, looks like no. Are there any members from our remote audience that would like to suggest future agenda items?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is the moderator, and if any members of the public would like to comment on agenda item 2, please raise your hand. If you've called in, you would do that by pressing *3, and if you've logged into the meeting, simply click on the hand next to your name. I do see we have a raised hand from a caller or attendee identified as Darren. Darren, you should see a prompt to unmute yourself. There you go. You're unmuted, Darren.
To gain more support and guidance for the law and ethics social worker examinations. The Pearson and the materials I've been studying is not helping, and I'm trying to get answers because I've taken that test 3 times, and I'm trying to obtain help and support around those study materials is not helping.
Thank you.
All right, this is a moderator. I see no further requests for comment. I return the floor back to you.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is public comment for items that are not on the agenda. I would now open up for public comments for items that are not on the agenda. As a reminder, the board may not discuss or take action on any matter raised during the public comment section, except to decide whether to place the matter on the agenda of a future meeting. Each commentator will have 2 minutes. Are there any comments from our board members? No? Okay. Are there any comments from those in the audience? All right, thank you. And are there any comments from our remote participants?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to invite any members of the public who'd like to comment on agenda item 3, public comment for items not on the agenda, to raise their hand by either clicking next to their name, or if you've called in, pressing *3. We'll give you a moment. All right, this is a moderator. I see no requests for comment. I return the floor back to you.
Thank you. This time we're going to begin our petition hearings. Today, the proceedings will be conducted by Matt Block. Good morning, Judge Block. The meeting is yours.
All right, good morning. The first matter on the agenda is the petition for early termination of probation of Heather Lynn Rogers. So if Ms. Rogers could come forward. And Ms. Mendoza, are you ready to go on record? All right, we are on the record before the Board of Behavioral Sciences to review the petition for early termination of probation of Heather Lynn Rogers. This is Board of Behavioral Sciences case number 2002-020-0000-891. Office of Administrative Hearings, case number 2023-100-279. Ms. Rogers, my name is Matt Block. I'm an administrative law judge with the Office of Administrative Hearings, and I've been assigned to preside over your petition today. Before we go any further, may I please have all members of the board identify themselves for our record, starting with the member furthest to my right.
In the bottom.
Eleanor Uribe, LCSW.
Abigail Ortega, LCSW member.
Justin Huft, LMFT member.
Chris Jones, LEP member and board chair.
Wendy Strack, public member.
Susan Friedman, public member.
Nick Boyd, LPCC member.
Yvette Caceres Willis, public member.
Dr. Annette Walker, public board member.
All right, thank you all. And we have established that
Singer,
is,
public
sorry, Mr.
board member.
Rangasinger. Thank you.
Kelly Renner-Singer, public board member.
All right, thank you. We have established that a quorum is present. Ms. Rogers, as we spoke off record, the procedure we'll follow this morning is Ms. Crawford here on behalf of the Attorney General's office will present your petition to the board. You'll then have the opportunity to make a presentation under oath, after which Ms. Crawford, the members of the board, and potentially myself may have some questions for you. And Ms. Crawford, I'm sorry, can I have your formal appearance?
Yes, Anahita Crawford, Deputy Attorney General, appearing on behalf of the people of the state of California pursuant to Government Code Section 11522.
All right, thank you. Ms. Crawford, are you ready to proceed?
Yes.
Please do.
I'd like to present a background of this matter. The petitioner was issued an associate clinical social worker registration on July 9th of 2018. That registration was canceled on August 19th of 2021 when a licensed clinical social worker license was issued. That license will expire August 31st of 2025. An accusation was filed on October 30th of 2020, which charged the petitioner with having been convicted of a crime on May 22nd of 2020. Petitioner had been convicted of driving under the influence with a blood alcohol content of 0.15%. On May 13th of 2021, a stipulated settlement and disciplinary order became effective, which placed the petitioner on 3 years probation. 6 months remain on petitioner's probation term. Petitioner has been fully compliant with probation, and her criminal conviction was dismissed pursuant to Penal Code Section 1203.4. Your Honor, I can move, or that's the end of my statement. I can move into the petition packet. I didn't know if you wanted to get comments from petitioner first. Would you like me to move in my exhibits?
Please.
Thank you. The Exhibit 1 is notice of hearing for today's hearing date. Would like to mark and admit that at this time.
Ms. Rogers, any objection to Exhibit 1?
No.
All right, Exhibit 1 is admitted.
Exhibit 2 is the license history certification for the petitioner. Would like to mark and admit that at this time.
Any objection, Ms. Rogers?
No.
All right, Exhibit 2 is admitted.
Exhibit 3 is a probation analyst memo to the board prepared by the probation analyst based on documents that are contained in this petition packet or in this exhibit packet. Would like to mark and introduce that at this time.
Any objection to Exhibit 3?
No.
All right, Exhibit 3 is admitted.
4 is the petition for early termination of probation and the attachments that were submitted by the petitioner that we'd like to mark and introduce at this time, subject to any administrative hearsay.
Any objection to Exhibit 4?
No.
Exhibit 4 is admitted.
Exhibit 5 contain the disciplinary documents in this matter. It's the decision and order and the stipulated settlement along with the accusation. I'd like to mark that as Exhibit 5 and introduce it.
Any objection?
No.
Exhibit 5 is admitted.
And Your Honor, Exhibit 6, you've previously issued an order for to file under seal. It's the psychotherapy information sheet and release of information for the petitioner and her psychotherapist that filled out the information. We'd like to mark and introduce that under seal at this time.
All right, Ms. Rogers, I did sign a protective order this morning to seal that exhibit. So any objection to that being received under seal?
No.
All right, Exhibit 6 is admitted under seal.
I don't have any other exhibits or witnesses.
All right, anything further then before we turn to Ms. Rogers?
No, Your Honor.
All right, Ms. Rogers, do you wish to testify this morning?
Yes.
Would you please raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you'll give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Would you please state and spell your full name for our record?
Yes. First name Heather, Heather. Middle name Lynn, Lynne. Last name Rogers, Rogers.
All right, thank you, Ms. Rogers. Because you're representing yourself, what I'm going to allow you to do is just essentially testify freely in the narrative about why you're seeking early termination of probation. This is your opportunity to tell the board a little bit about yourself and about the efforts that you've made since the conviction. So at this point, I am going to turn the floor over to you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you everyone for allowing me to be here this morning. My name is Heather Lynn Rogers. I am here requesting early termination as I have maintained complete compliance throughout my board probation order. I completed 2 forensic psychological evaluations as ordered. I complete psychotherapy. I participate in psychiatric therapy. I participate in 3 recovery meetings a week. It's okay. Okay, sorry. 3 recovery meetings a week. I do have a sponsor and I am working the 12 steps. Throughout this time, I've maintained employment without any disciplinary actions through employment. And I have not committed any other offenses since my conviction in 2019. That's it.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Rogers. Ms. Crawford, I will turn to you first. Any questions for Ms. Rogers?
Yes, Your Honor, thank you. Ms. Rogers, I wanted to talk a little bit about the incident that brought you to the board's attention. Can you describe through your rehabilitation efforts that you've made, What led to your decision to drink and drive that night?
It was a very poor decision. I had been out with other colleagues, actually. They were celebrating completing their hours, and we had gone to a bar restaurant to celebrate for their hours. And I drank 2 alcoholic beverages and proceeded to drive home, which resulted in a car accident. And when the car accident occurred, the police arrived as well as fire and ambulance. I declined medical attention at that time, and I admitted to drinking when the police arrived. I submitted to a breathalyzer at the time of the scene, which came out to 0.15, and I was subsequently arrested and placed into custody. Was that the answer? Like, was that the question?
My question was if you've explored through your rehabilitation
Okay,
efforts, what
sorry.
led to that decision?
Sorry.
It's okay.
I have definitely explored that. With working with my therapist, I had been going to therapy prior to my conviction. And then when the conviction had occurred, I had increased my time with my therapist to process what I had done. Working with my sponsor has really helped highlight some of the things that led to my decision that night. And also working with my current therapist on how to understand myself, my triggers, responses to friends, family who are drinking now that I have been sober since May of 2021. I've just celebrated 2.5 years of sobriety. Through the recovery community, you learn a lot about yourself and your addictive behaviors, unfortunately. But fortunately, you have a community that helps process that with you.
Do you mind sharing what some of the things were that you learned about your, you said it highlighted triggers for you, some of your addictive personality issues. Could you share with us what some of that was that led to that incident?
Yeah, I would say I didn't have very good coping skills, and I had used alcohol as a coping mechanism because I didn't want to address either frustrations with work, frustrations with family. And now that I know when I am frustrated or if there's a feeling that I don't like, I don't hide from it. I address it the moment it comes up, so that way I am able to be a better person to myself and to my friends and family.
And you mentioned a sobriety date of May of 2021.
Yes.
What do you consider yourself sober from?
Alcohol and all other substances that could be considered mind altering.
For you, the DUI conviction was not an isolated incident of excessive drinking?
No. But that was the incident that led to me understanding that I have a problem.
Where do you presently work?
Currently, I work at San Benito County Behavioral Health in Hollister, California. I just actually accepted that place of employment on October 30th of 2023. Prior to October 30th, I was working at Monterey County Behavioral Health, and I had worked there for 5 years, and they thankfully allowed me to continue my employment there while I was going through this process.
At the time of your DUI conviction, you were working for the County of Monterey?
Yes, I was working for the AB 109 probation department as a license, well, not at that time. I was an associate clinical social worker obtaining my hours. And due to my conviction, it was a conflict of interest. So I was pulled from that program and placed at the emergency department at a local hospital doing 5150 crisis work.
What prompted your move from Monterey County to your present employment?
It was another opportunity for a growing experience and better pay. But now I work as the sole clinician on a substance abuse team. So I have a team of substance abuse counselors that are working with clients who are on drug court and behavioral mental health court.
What do you do as the sole clinician there?
I provide clinical recommendations or clinical feedback when substance abuse counselors are working with clients that are unsure about if they're presenting in a way that could be alcohol or substance abuse related, or if it's a mental health concern. And I help with the referral process on getting clients into substance abuse treatment facilities. So I'm the clinician that's able to provide recommendations on placement.
Do you also see patients?
Yes, I do.
And do you see them for behavioral therapy?
Yes, I do.
What does that aspect of your job entail?
So since I work on a team with substance abuse counselors, the substance abuse counselor is more focused towards their recovery and their substance abuse classes, like doing seeking safety or other substance abuse related classes. And then I'm there for their mental health. So if something comes up when they're with the substance abuse counselor that the counselor doesn't have the scope of practice, then they'll be brought into me. So that way I could help process their trauma, their mental health, grief and loss, psychosocial stressors that they wouldn't be able to address with just a substance abuse counselor. And then I also do crisis work on that team as well too. Yes, sorry.
And you said you started that position just
On
a few weeks ago?
Yes, October 30th, 2023.
Okay. In your opening statement, you walked us through some of the rehabilitation efforts you've made. Can you hit those points, but explain to us what you've done? For example, you mentioned having a sponsor. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, so I go to 3 recovery meetings a week. Within the recovery meetings, I'm also a person of service, so I will secretary the meeting. I will co-secretary the meeting. I've been a phone list representative and a group service representative where I go to the area meetings and collect all the information and bring it back to the group. Within that, I have my sponsor. She has over 30 years of sobriety, and I am working on my 12 steps. I'm currently on my 6th step, which is asking God to remove all my defects of character.
You mentioned that part of your alcohol was part of your coping mechanism for things that you may not have liked either about yourself or your situation. How are you finding the 6th step, being that it's about removing your own personal defects?
Well, at least I'm able to process what I don't like versus using alcohol or other substances to not address the things that I don't like. And having a sponsor to be able to guide you through the step is important, so that way you're not alone. And that way she can help kind of guide me on how in recovery they won't be considered defects. They can be considered good parts of my behavior and who I am as a person. Because I think there's a lot of times that maybe I won't be general. Maybe there's times that I look at myself in a negative light. And with being in the 12 steps, you find out that you're not a bad person. There's just certain things about us that are different.
And are you also going to, is this at Narcotics Anonymous that you're working through your 12 steps?
Yes, at Narcotics Anonymous, they are a 12-step program.
Okay. Why aren't you in Alcoholics Anonymous? Or is there a difference?
There is a difference because in Alcoholics Anonymous, I think that they just solely focus on alcohol. Narcotics Anonymous is alcohol, any other substances that could be mind altering. I chose Narcotics Anonymous because of the fellowship. There is not as much of a religious aspect. It's more of a spiritual aspect. And it's when in the meetings, we always say it's a God of our understanding. And so I connected with that fellowship more.
You also took a 3-month first offender DUI course. Can you describe what you learned in that course that helps maintain your sobriety?
Oh, that was so long ago, it seems like. That I'm not the only person in the world that this has happened to. And that other people suffer from some of the same things that I mentioned, maybe not liking ourselves, which led to poor decision making. I actually thought that the first offender DUI course was, it helped me feel less alone in the situation that I was in. And that also, if you drink and drive, you could end up seriously harming someone or yourself. And that's something that I don't ever want to do again.
You've got alcohol and other drug college courses that you've taken as well. Can you tell us why you took those courses?
Yes, well, the board had asked me to take a remedial course, not a remedial, I'm sorry, a college level course about alcohol and or other substances, like an introductory course. And I felt like I wanted to continue learning more about it, not just as a student, but as a participant of that community. And I started to think that if I complete all the courses in the program, then I could maybe eventually get an associate's in addiction studies or become a substance abuse counselor myself.
Are there any additional stressors that you have experienced in addition to just being on probation, where your sobriety and your efforts at rehabilitation have helped you through those difficult times?
Yeah, I had family pass away since I have been sober, and I always thought that that would be something that would cause to take you out, is what we say in the community. But it didn't. And I'm really thankful for that, and being able to be fully present with my family versus somebody who was intoxicated. I was able to help my mom through that process and be a source of support for her and for myself. But that was definitely a hard one because you're surrounded with family who doesn't have the same either problem or they don't see that I have a problem. And so just being able to be strong in my sobriety and telling my family that I don't drink and I don't do any other drugs. And that's something that I constantly have to sometimes remind my family about. Changing my friend group, being with people who respect where I'm at right now versus people who see me on how I used to be. And so being able to just be strong within myself and remain clean and sober.
Who who do you have in your support group?
I have my mom, I have my stepdad, I have my brother, I have my significant other, my therapist, my psychiatrist, my sponsor. I have a lot of friends in the NA community. Since I attend 3 meetings a week, I see them 3 times a week, and that's another part of an extended family that I didn't even know that was out there. My cat.
And if your probation is terminated early, what is your intention with regards to therapy and your NA and everything else that you're doing to stay sober?
I definitely will be continuing all of that. I've always been a firm believer in therapy, not just because of my profession. I had been going to therapy off and on since I was in high school, so I have no intentions of stopping therapy. I have no intentions of stopping my psychiatry. And I have no intentions of stopping my time with Narcotics Anonymous. I want to be able to complete my 12 steps. I want to be a sponsor. I want to be somebody that gives back within that community.
Do you have a relapse prevention plan?
Like if I do, or
Right.
yeah.
Something that, do you have a plan of if you're triggered, if you're feeling weak, what you would do to prevent your relapse?
Yes. Calling my sponsor, calling my other friends within NA, talking to my significant other, talking to my mom. I talk to my mom almost every day, so she probably knows more about me than I'd like for her to know, but I prefer to always be honest and open with my mom if there's anything that's going on. I look to her as a part of my support system and my relapse prevention because she is very proud of me, and I don't want to hurt her the way I did because of my conviction.
Is your significant other also sober?
Yes. We just went to his sister's wedding and everybody else drank but us.
Why are you asking to terminate probation early?
I just want to be able to, I guess, not have such a dark cloud hanging over me sometimes, like especially when it came to looking for employment or maybe just seeking other growing opportunities, and then having this kind of not show who I really am. It shows definitely a poor part of who I was, but it's not who I currently am. Maybe hopefully being a part of or creating a private practice. It just, yeah, I think that's the best thing I can say.
Thank you. I don't have any other questions.
All right, thank you, Ms. Crawford. I'll now open it up for the board, and I will go to Mr. Ranasinghe first.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have no questions.
All right, thank you. Ms. Uribe?
So you mentioned, good morning.
Morning.
You mentioned that you'll continue to attend your meetings. It sounds like you're attending 3 of them.
Yes, I attend Friday night, Sunday night, and Monday night.
So as far as I understand, you have a little bit more time to finish. I think you're on the 6th step.
Yes.
Okay, so once you finish your 12 steps, do you see yourself continuing to attend those meetings or have a sponsor?
Yes. Just because you finish the 12 steps doesn't mean you're done. So my sponsor always encourages that, like she's always saying, this is your first rough draft, and then you're going to go back and do another draft. So it's not just that it's done after the first 12. You keep going. You go back and start at 1, because in your first round of 12 steps, we call it like you're like a baby who's learning to walk. And so as you've continued with the 12 steps, you go back and start again because maybe there's something that you didn't notice the first time. So I definitely do plan to continue meeting with my sponsor to continue that and hopefully becoming a sponsor myself. But we don't, in the community, you can't sponsor somebody until you've completed your 12 steps the first time.
Okay. Another question I had was, many people come here because they've made the choice to drink or use substances and drive while under the influence. Any suggestion, if you were to just give a feedback to other people, what would you recommend and what would you recommend for the board? You know, so people that are considering that, and then what suggestions might you have for the board to kind of alert others of the risks of
Oh
doing that?
man, I mean, I definitely always, like, if there's anybody that I know who thinks that they're okay to drive home, I am always trying to share my story so that way they don't ever have to be in the position that I've been in. I feel like that's the best way that I can do that. I'm actually really thankful for the board for being able to, I mean, although the probation's like hard when you first get it, it's not a cakewalk, but it definitely has given me the ability to change my life in a way that I didn't think I could. That's it.
Thank you.
Ms. Ortega?
Yes. Abigail Ortega. Thank you for being here and for sharing. I'm curious how this experience has impacted your role as a clinician.
Um, it's impacted my role as a clinician significantly just because before, when I was working with the probation department, I was, telling clients, oh, these are the things that you need to do, when in turn I wasn't doing those things myself. So as we call sometimes that imposter syndrome, I felt like I was being a fraud because I was recommending drug treatment when I wasn't a sober person prior to the conviction. So now, since I am a clean and sober person, I don't have that feeling. And I feel like that I'm able to have a better understanding of what it takes to be a sober person and a clean person. And I think that gives me a better understanding of my clients at times because I have a better understanding of myself and what I've had to go through. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Also wondering how you are, I guess, like how are you balancing, right, the heavy work that you're doing personally and professionally? There's a lot of therapy and meetings and, crisis and clinical work. So do you feel you have a balance at this moment with also like self-care?
I do. I don't consider the NA meetings to be a chore. I think that's a part of my self-care. It gives me a chance to laugh and smile and talk about things that are not work related. So that's a big part of it, actually, of that balance. I have my family, like I said, my cat, and then, I go to the gym. Yeah, when I get home from work, I just remain present with my significant other and my cat because I got her after the conviction because I needed something to kind of keep me grounded. And so she gets to be with me as a clean and sober person versus probably somebody who wouldn't focus so much on her before the conviction. So she's a big part of my grounding. Also being with my significant other's family. His family is local. My family is not. My family's in Southern California, and I live in Monterey County, so that's about a 6-hour-ish drive. And his family is 30 minutes, so we go and visit his mom often. And I think just being more focused with family and myself, because that's important too.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Huft?
Justin Huft. Well, first of all, thank you, Ms. Rogers, for being here because it's a challenging, stressful experience for you. So we appreciate you being here. I want to ask a follow-up question to Board Member Ortega, asking essentially what's different now for your clients. And you discussed this reduction in imposter syndrome, this internal experience that's different. And I'm wondering what would be different for a client seeing you now compared to 4 years ago.
It's interesting because in the NA community, sometimes I run into clients that didn't know that I was a part of the NA community. And so being able to share my story with he's a previous client because he's a part of NA. So him being able to see my story when I've been asked to share, and being able to see like the honest person that I am versus somebody that sits behind a desk, I wouldn't be able to speak on behalf of the other clients that I've had in the past prior to my conviction, but I can think of that one because he's now actually a great source of recovery support, you know.
Great, thank you. Can you elaborate a little bit more on what would be different for you if probation ends early? You discussed some possible new growing opportunities, but maybe you can be a little more precise.
Well, I don't think anything would change if I got off probation, you know, like I would still continue with my sobriety, continue working the 12 steps, continuing to go to those meetings. Those are the 3 meetings that I feel I've really connected with, and there's people in those meetings that I've really grown very fond of. I would continue therapy. So, I mean, I don't think anything would change except for probably not sending out so much stuff in the mail.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Jones?
Thank you for being here. I have a follow-up question to Mr. Huff's follow-up question to Ms. Ortega. It's probably, I think, the thing that is ringing with us.
Yeah.
So I'm interested to know how, you know, the imposter syndrome piece of it is one thing, but when you were, what stuck with me was the statement that, you know, you were recommending substance abuse
Right.
recovery when you were using yourself.
Right.
And now you're not doing it. So how has that reconciled with you and informed your practice now that you're sober, to look back to where you were? How is that going to inform your practice moving forward?
Moving forward. I mean, I think probably having more empathy and compassion for somebody who's struggling versus before I was looking at probably at a more textbook, like through the DSM, because that's kind of what you're taught when you get out of grad school. If somebody doesn't meet X, B, or A, B, and C, then that means they go this way. But I didn't have an understanding of what it was to actually really work on your recovery. And so I think now I don't think everybody fits in a box. Just like I don't think I fit in a box technically. And so now working with clients and, you know, discussing their treatment, there may be ways that I can understand now that certain things may not work for someone versus saying that they have to complete these recommendations or else. Because before it was a probation situation. So their probation officer wants to see a certain thing. And now this is kind of a little bit different because it's drug court. You know, being on a collaborative team with judges and public defenders and things like that, I'm able to speak to how certain things don't always match the next person. And so I think now I have a better idea of helping somebody versus kind of asking for compliance, like how it has been before in the past when I worked at the probation department.
Thank you. No further questions.
All right, thank you. Ms. Stratt?
Just want to say thank you for being here and for sharing your story. I don't have any questions at
Okay,
this time.
great. Thank you.
Ms. Friedman?
Good morning. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
I'm just wondering, you mentioned going to a wedding with your significant other. When your probation ends, would you think of just maybe having one drink and being very careful?
No, I don't. No. My significant other has also experienced the same thing that I have experienced prior to us being together. So neither of us will never ever take that chance again. And I think that's really important because I understand what it's like for him to have a DUI and I understand what it's like for me to have a DUI, and neither of us ever want to be in that position ever again. So we just don't. He likes what are they called? Sparkling waters, and I just prefer water.
Thank you. I have one quick question. You mentioned you work with the probation department a lot. Are you going to be working with the care court?
That's what I'm doing right now. Before in the past, I was working for it was behavioral health, and I was placed within the probation department, and that was for felony offenders. And currently now I'm on a team where it is for care court, behavioral health court, and drug court, all of the reentry type of programs.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Boyd?
Good morning. Thank you again for being here. One question I think that kind of comes to mind for me is, being in recovery is a huge step, and I think that the process you've made is remarkable, and I appreciate you sharing your story with
Thank
that. And being in the role that you are, and helping others and making these types of recommendations, you talked a little bit about your relapse plan somewhat. I'm curious how you may anticipate potentially hearing stories that might come up for you that might be triggering or potentially wanting to maybe think about relapse or some type of capacity. I'm curious if you can maybe just talk more about how you plan to manage that.
Yeah. Being a clinician, you kind of hear definitely a lot of stories that can be triggering in any way, whether it's emotionally or substance use wise. The nice thing currently being on the substance abuse team, they're all substance abuse counselors who are also recovering people as well. So now know that if I have something that I feel like is going to cause a relapse in any way or a trigger in any way, there's other staff that I can go to who are recovering folks in the community, and that I would be able to go to who have significantly more time than me. Like one of the staff members I met, talked to yesterday, has over 20 years. That's somebody that I can lean on or at least talk to because they have way more time than I have. I mean, that's like 2 decades. So I'm still learning, like I kind of mentioned before, like I am that toddler who's just learning how to walk. And sometimes you need help. And I think being able to work with others who are in the recovery community as well is really important, because before I didn't have that. It was kind of a little bit more isolating, like, oh, well, that's your problem. And so now I have fellow colleagues that know that it's a we problem sometimes. And so being able to lean on them, I think would be more beneficial.
Ms. Casares Willis?
Hi. Ms. Rogers, thank you for sharing the evolution of your story. I have no further questions.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Walker?
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Rogers, I have no questions, but I do wonder, what is the name of your cat?
Okay. Well, so I'm a big, I used to watch the Munsters a lot when I was a kid, and the Addams Family when I was a kid, like the original. So her name's Wednesday Addams, and she's all black, and she kind of has an attitude. So it really helps sometimes to ground me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Ms. Crawford, any follow-up questions based on any of the boards? Ms. Rogers, is there anything else that you would like to say?
No, my situation has definitely been a blessing in disguise. In the beginning, it's very hard, but it's helped me gain a better understanding of who I am and the people that I allow in my life. And I would like to thank the board for, all the stipulations, because then I was able to kind of come out a better person than I was before. So thank you.
All right, are there any follow-up questions from the board? All right. Well, Ms. Rogers, at the end of the day today, the board will go into closed session to deliberate. You won't get an answer today, but the board will issue a written decision within 30 days, and you'll be notified of that in the future, okay?
Okay. I
thank you.
appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thank you for being here, and good luck to you.
Thank you.
With that, as to this matter, we are off the record. The matter is submitted.
All right, thank you, Judge. We would like to take a 10-minute break. All right, it looks like we are ready to reconvene the meeting. Judge Block.
All right, the next matter on the agenda is the petition of Sheldon Samuel Cohen. So if Mr. Cohen could please come forward. Morning.
Morning.
Ms. Mendoza, you ready?
Hi.
All right, we're on record before the Board of Behavioral Sciences to review the petition for early termination of probation of Sheldon Samuel Cohen. This is BBS case number 2002-021-000-614. Office of Administrative Hearings, case number 2023-100-283. Mr. Cohen, my name is Matt Block. I'm an administrative law judge with the Office of Administrative Hearings. I'm assigned to preside over your petition hearing today. For our record, may I have all members of the board identify themselves, starting with the member furthest to my right.
Eleanor Uribe, LCSW member.
Abigail Ortega, LCSW member.
Justin Huft, LMFT.
Chris Jones, LEP member and board chair.
Strack, public member.
Susan Friedman, public member.
Dr. Nick Boyd, LPCC member.
Yvette Caceres Willis, public member.
Good morning, Dr. Annette Walker, public member.
All right, thank you.
And
may I have
Singer,
the-
public member.
May I have the appearance of the Deputy Attorney General, please?
Anahita Crawford, Deputy Attorney General, appearing on behalf of the people of the state of California pursuant to Government Code Section 11522.
All right, thank you, Ms. Crawford. Mr. Cohen, I know you sat through the last hearing and we spoke beforehand. Similar to what happened in the last hearing, Ms. Crawford will make a presentation. She'll present your petition. You'll then have the opportunity to testify under oath, and then the members of the board, Ms. Crawford and potentially myself, may have some questions for you, okay?
Yes, thank you.
All right, Ms. Crawford, are you ready to proceed?
Yes.
All right, please do.
The petitioner was issued an associate marriage and family therapist registration on September 11th of 2019. The registration was upgraded to a licensed marriage and family therapist license on May 4th of 2022. The license is current and active and will expire on May 31st of 2024. The board filed a statement of issues on March 12th of 2019, denying petitioner's application for an associate marriage and family therapist registration based on multiple criminal convictions. On October 15th of 2009, petitioner had been convicted of a misdemeanor possession of narcotic, namely OxyContin. On July 6th of 2011, petitioner was convicted of a felony possession of narcotic when officers found him smoking heroin. On March 26th of 2012, petitioner had been convicted of a felony possession of a narcotic and felony possession of a controlled substance. Petitioner was found in possession of heroin, which he admitted to smoking prior to his arrest. And on September 13th of 2017, the petitioner had been convicted of driving under the influence with a blood alcohol level of 0.13%. A stipulated settlement became effective on September 11th of 2019, and petitioner's registration was issued and placed on probation for 5 years with optional and standard terms and conditions. The projected end date for petitioner's probation was September 10th of 2024. However, on December 15th of 2020, an accusation and petition to revoke probation was filed. The circumstances surrounding that were that on August 14th of 2020, petitioner was convicted of fleeing an officer who was attempting to initiate a traffic stop. Petitioner had initially stopped and then made a U-turn and began to flee the pursuing officer, driving the wrong way and making another U-turn before finally stopping and being placed under arrest. A stipulated settlement was adopted by the board on July 22nd of 2021, and the probation of petitioner was extended for one additional year to place him on probation until September 10th of 2025. The petitioner has been fully compliant with probation since his petition to revoke probation. He's requesting early termination of probation with nearly 2 years remaining on his probation term. Your Honor, I'd like to introduce our exhibits.
All right, thank you.
Exhibit 1 is the notice of hearing for today's hearing date. Would like to mark and introduce that.
All right, any objection to that, Mr. Cohen?
No, Your Honor.
Exhibit 1 is admitted.
Exhibit 2 is the license and registration history certification for the petitioner. Would like to mark and introduce that as Exhibit 2.
Any objection, Mr. Cohen?
No.
Exhibit 2 is admitted.
Exhibit 3 is a probation analyst memo to the board summarizing the case history in this matter. Would like to mark and introduce that as Exhibit 3.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
Exhibit 3 is admitted.
Exhibit 4 is a petition for early termination of probation and the attachments that were submitted by the petitioner. We'd like to mark and introduce that subject to administrative hearsay.
Any objection, Mr. Cohen?
No, Your Honor.
Exhibit 4 is admitted.
Exhibit 5 contains the disciplinary documents, which are the decision and order, a stipulated settlement and accusation in case number 2002-021-00614, as well as the stipulated settlement and disciplinary order and statement of issues in case number 2002-019-001-016. Would like to mark and introduce those as Exhibit 5.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
Exhibit 5 is admitted.
And the last exhibit is Exhibit 6. It's the psychotherapy information sheet and release of information that Your Honor has previously issued a protective order to file under seal. We would like to mark and introduce that at this time.
And Mr. Cohen, I did sign a protective order this morning. So this will be, if you don't have an objection, it will be received but under seal. So any objection?
No, Your Honor.
Right. Exhibit 6 is admitted, subject to the protective order.
Your Honor, I don't have any further information or witnesses to present.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Crawford. Mr. Cohen, are you prepared to testify?
Yes, Your Honor.
Would you please raise your right hand, sir? You solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you'll give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Would you please state and spell your full name for our record?
Sheldon Samuel Cohen, SHELDON SAMUEL COHEN.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Cohen. Now, similar to the last hearing, I am going to let you testify just freely in the narrative. This is your opportunity to tell the board a little bit about yourself and what you think the board needs to decide the case fairly. The board does have the benefit of having the petition packet. So what the board is particularly concerned about is the rehabilitation that you've engaged in since the discipline that you've been imposed. Okay?
Okay.
All right. So I will turn the floor over to you.
Didn't think I was going to be nervous, but it's pretty nervous. Okay. I wrote a letter. I'm just going to read through my letter. I'm composing this letter with the intention of sharing the transformation that has occurred in my life since the initiation of sorry. Yeah. Do you want me to start over? Okay. I am composing this letter with the intention of sharing the transformation that has occurred in my life since the initiation of my probation with the BBS. To begin, I want to express my gratitude for affording me the chance to demonstrate my effectiveness within this professional realm. I'd also like to acknowledge that if it weren't for this probationary period, I might have not made the personal choice to embrace my sobriety. In the context of AA, we often term this as a God shot, believing that a higher power guided our decision to become sober. Over the course of my 4 years of continuous sobriety, I have wholeheartedly committed myself to the principles of AA, significantly enhancing the quality of my life. My current standing and achievements would not have been possible without my sobriety, and for this, I am profoundly thankful to the BBS. Transitioning to a new therapist, the beginning of my probation posed considerable challenges, especially given the strong bond I had established with my previous therapist. The requirement to transition due to the probation was a difficult loss to endure. Nonetheless, I was able to process this emotional journey with my current therapist, Wendy Hoffman, who has been instrumental in heightening my self-awareness and aiding me in navigating various aspects of my life, including relationships, job transitions, and dealing with loss. Through my relationships cultivated in AA and consistent weekly therapy, my life has undergone a remarkable transformation, a true leveling up. Achieving licensure as an LMFT and being promoted to assistant clinical director at the Residential Treatment Center, where I am presently employed, marks significant milestones. In light of these accomplishments, I believe I am now prepared to progress to the next stage and successfully conclude this probationary period. In 2021, my world was deeply shaken. By the passing of my father. Something I had never anticipated. Sorry. And this experience served as a This experience served as a significant challenge, particularly because I had always been inclined to evade and not confront the harsh realities of life. Fortunately, due to my commitment to sobriety, actively engaging in the steps of AA, and participating in individual therapy, I managed to reconcile with my father and express genuine gratitude for all he had done. I continue to utilize him in combination with my higher power to navigate everyday life. Whew, it's a hard paragraph. While I appreciate the value this probationary period has added to my recovery, I am eager for the opportunity to expand my practice beyond California, specifically in Nashville, where my family resides. Unfortunately, due to my current probationary status, I am restricted from obtaining credentials for insurance panels, and I'm unable to relocate from California. I sincerely hope the board recognizes the extent of my progress I have achieved and is open to granting me the chance to transition into the subsequent phase of my career. My aspiration is to establish a thriving practice in Nashville and be closer in proximity to my family. I have a deep passion for the field of psychotherapy, a vocation that has been my lifelong calling. I remain steadfastly committed to this path, regardless of any challenges I may face. My personal life experiences serve as a valuable foundation for my present clinical work, enabling me to connect with clients both on an individual and group level. Presently, I am dedicated to providing care and residential mental health treatment for individuals dealing with severe challenges. During my year with this organization, I progressed from being a lead primary therapist to assuming the role of assistant clinical director. Additionally, I obtained certification in EMDR and successfully integrated this therapeutic approach into the majority of my client sessions. The relationships I hold with myself, my faith, friends, and family are of paramount importance to me. I prioritize nurturing and maintaining these connections, embracing the principles of life one day at a time. I recognize the significance of attending AA meetings as essential medicine to sustain and navigate the journey of life. My relationship to AA has been paramount in my sobriety. Not only have I had the opportunity to establish lasting relationships, I've been able to pay it forward, being of service. I've been able to sponsor those early in recovery and guide them through the principles set out in the AA book. I've just acquired a house in Nashville, which is conveniently located only 20 minutes away from my mom. I'm excited about the chance to live closer to her and other family members. Another positive aspect of my journey to sobriety is a strengthened bond and active involvement with my family. Following my father's passing, my relationship with my mother has deepened. My near future goals entail moving to Nashville once my probation is complete and sitting for the exam and becoming licensed in that state. This time I am unable to pursue because of my probation status here in California. I really believe that I have shown my capacity to succeed mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, and I'm ready for the next step in my journey. Again, I am eternally grateful for the BBS and helping me take this leap into my sobriety, and I fully intend to continue making growth and helping those in and out of recovery.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Cohen. I will turn to you, Ms. Crawford, for questions of Mr. Cohen.
Sheesh.
Mr. Cohen, can you tell us a little bit about your drug history and the rehabilitation progression that brought you to where you are today?
Where do I start? My drug history probably began near the end of high school. I started dabbling with, I always when I share my story in AA, I always tell people, something that I heard in AA is, I knew I was an addict far before the drugs entered my system. It just so happened that when I started using drugs, that sort of became more clear to me. So, I grew up feeling different. And when I began using drugs in, I think 2005 or 2006, it allowed me sort of the window to not feel different. And from there on, it was, off to the races. I wanted to use anything and everything that I could, find to like keep me sane and stable. And my mom would always tell me that I always have to learn the hard way. And that didn't quite make sense to me for many years because, as you can see, in the packet, I have many arrests that revolve around drugs and alcohol. So I went in and out of treatment between like 2006 and 2012, in and out of treatment, in and out of outpatient. I did therapy, but I just wasn't ready to get sober. In 2012, that was my first experience with jail. I spent 2 months there. I got pulled over for, making a right turn without stopping. And at the time, I had crystal meth and heroin in my car. I was also drunk. And I spent 2 months in jail. And it was a wake-up call for me, but it wasn't enough of a wake-up call. Thankfully, but not thankfully, my parents at the time said, you need to stop using drugs, but you can continue drinking and smoking. And that for me was, a green light. So I continued for a period of time up until 2019, still drinking and using, and got a DUI in, I think it was 2016 or 2017, and still wasn't done. And I continue to express gratitude to you all, really, because 2019 was probably the first time in my entire life that I actually surrendered, and I stopped playing God. Because for me, I grew up in a pretty, I wouldn't say a wealthy family, but an enabling family. And I constantly felt that no matter what happened, my mom and dad were going to get me out of trouble. So, in 2019, I begrudgingly made the decision to get sober and committed to AA. And I've stayed sober ever since.
What has helped you in AA and any other treatments that you've had that has been the final straw for you, that you're not going to go back, that door's still not open?
The life I have today is beyond my wildest dreams. If you were to ask me 4 or 5 years ago how I imagine my life to be today, I wouldn't say what it is now. I mean, the fact that I just bought a house, I'm moving into a clinical director position once my 2 years of licensing happens. It's beyond my wildest dreams. I mean, the relationships I have with my family, with my friends, like it feels authentic for me. And I think for many years, my relationships are very much transactional. It wasn't so much about the relationship, but it was, what you had that I wanted. And quite honestly, I didn't just, I haven't been to so much inpatient treatment, but residential treatment for me, like it wasn't enough. I really found that with the relationships that I've built in AA and my connection to God now, that I realize that I'm not God. And I think for many years I really did feel that I was just above everyone and anything. And AA has really allowed me to see that, I'm not God.
You mentioned your job as something that that's an achievement.
Mhm.
How is that going? How does that job translate to when you move to Nashville?
So when I move, well, if and when I move to Nashville, I will not be working at that job anymore. So the goal is to continue doing teletherapy and then building an in-person private practice in Nashville.
Okay.
So at this time, I can't do teletherapy. Well, I can, but I can't do these like insurance panels because of my probation status.
With your petition to revoke probation, that had to do with a conviction as well. Can you describe the circumstances around that conviction where you were evading a police officer?
I think the main thing for me is I really hadn't surrendered, quite honestly. Like, in 2019, when I took this probation, I was very much in the mindset of like, I'm just going to go through the motions. I'm going to do the bare minimum that's required of me for the BBS and just sort of do what needs to be done. And I was still very much in that mindset when I had made that decision. On top of that, off topic, maybe not so off topic. When I got sober, I decided I wanted to take up riding motorcycles. Call it thrill seeker, I guess. And my parents told me that if I got a motorcycle, they'd kill me. Not literally, but so when I was out, I was riding with a permit, and it was after dark, and I knew that if I got pulled over, it would somehow get to my parents, and I was going to have that conversation, which I didn't want to have. So, when the lights came on, it was definitely a fight or flight response, and I was very much in flight.
So in that incident, there was no drugs or alcohol
No.
involved.
No.
So that was more of a
solely poor decision making in sobriety.
Are those two seem to be separate things? Your poor decision making when you weren't sober, and then poor decision making in sobriety.
Yeah, well, I call it, I'm still not surrendering to the process. I still felt like in my head, I was very much operating from ego and hadn't quite surrendered to being powerless.
So how have you addressed that particular incident with, even though you were sober, you were not under the influence of anything, you still made a decision that had more to do with how you perceived yourself versus the drugs and alcohol impacting your decision making?
You're asking how have I done the work to look at that part of myself in sobriety?
What work have you done around why you evaded a police officer that had nothing to do with drugs and alcohol clouding your judgment, but just had something to do with how you perceived yourself in that incident? Why did you evade a police officer in that incident, and how did you address why you evaded a police officer?
Okay. I mean, therapy has been big for me. I don't feel like at this point in my life I'm living in fear. There's no reason for me to break the law. There's, like the life I have today isn't a life that I even have to consider breaking the law to live. I follow the rules. I do everything that's expected of me. And at this point, I can say that I'm happier in my life now, living life on life's terms, if that answers your question.
Mhm. Are you still currently working at Insight?
I'm not.
You're not. Okay. When did you leave? Well, what were the period of employment you had at Insight?
I want to say it was 2016 or 2017 up until last March or April. Yeah, I was in between jobs then, and I had the opportunity to go to Israel for a birthright trip. So I left my job to do that trip, and currently I work for a company called Elevation Behavioral Health in Agora, California.
Was there a reason you chose not to go back to Insight?
I wanted to work with a different population.
Okay. What did you do at Insight?
I worked with at-risk adolescents. So we did group therapy, individual and family therapy, Monday through Friday. And I was also promoted to assistant clinical director there. I didn't have quite as many responsibilities as I have now, but I basically just assisted the clinical director there and ran a parent group every Tuesday.
Why did you want to work with a different population?
I was feeling very burnt out working with children. I worked for them for about 5 years, and I wanted to work. I wanted to see what it was like working with adults.
What about that work made you feel burnt out?
I think just developmentally, it was more of a difficult relationship to continue. It was also a long-term treatment center, so I was with these clients for a year plus on a daily basis, and yeah, it was just the at-risk youth. It was just challenging.
And what do you do presently?
I work with adults, so I work with adults. We're just below hospital level, so also challenging. I work with diagnoses anywhere from substance use disorders to bipolar to schizophrenia, and it's a 30-day inpatient residential treatment center.
Okay.
So I do mainly trauma work and EMDR with them.
And you said you've been there since March of 2023?
No, I've been there since June of last year.
Okay, June of 2022.
Yes.
And you left Insight in March of 2022?
I believe so, March or April.
Okay. Do you have a sobriety date?
I do. It's September 9th, 2019.
What is significant about that date?
Everything. It's the first time in my life I've ever been, well, not in my childhood, but the first time in my adulthood that I've been sober without the use of drugs and alcohol. So yeah, from that day, I have not put any mood or mind altering substance in my body.
Was there anything that happened in the weeks or days before that date that made you commit to your sobriety?
Actually, it was, I don't know exactly when it was, but when I was working at Insight, the CEO was working as a substance use counselor at the time, which, the previous person talked about being an imposter. I definitely lived in that shadow. My job at the time sort of was hitting roadblocks because, you know, there was no other position for me to move into. And my boss was just like, you know, you're ridiculous to not take this probation and become a therapist. You know, he's like, you're great at what you do, you know, take this probation and, you know, see for yourself. So like his words definitely helped me make that decision.
Taking the board's probation offer so that you can become registered?
Correct. While I'm getting sober.
So you still have about 2 years left on your probation. What can you tell this board about why they should terminate probation 2 years early when that probation was extended specifically because of this most recent arrest?
Aside from the logistical component, you know, I'd love to be close to family. You know, I'm the last one here in California. All my family lives out of state. I'd love to have that opportunity to live in close proximity rather than taking a plane. My mom and I's relationship has, you know, become the closest it's ever been. You know, we talk daily. And I'd love to begin a new chapter of my life. Yeah, I mean, and at this point in my life, I definitely feel like I'm ready to start that new chapter.
And why should the board feel comfortable terminating your probation 2 years earlier than you had agreed to with a stipulation?
Why should the board feel comfortable? I mean, AA will never not be a part of my life. You know, if I'm granted early termination, you know, AA and therapy will be in my life forever. Again, I mean, the relationships that I've developed in AA, like, you know, I don't just go to meetings, you know, like I have relationships. I have people that count on me and people that I can count on, and they don't revolve around give and take. You know, I have solid relationships with people in the program, and I intend to continue, you know, fostering and developing those relationships with people for the rest of my life.
Did you mention, do you have a sponsor?
I do.
Okay. How long have you had a sponsor for?
I've had a sponsor since shortly after I started this probation. I've been through a couple sponsors. The sponsor that I have now, I've been with for about a year. But I've had a sponsor all through my probation.
Have you finished working your 12 steps?
I have.
Are you still working through a second set, as we've learned?
I was a little, yeah, no. So 10, 11, and 12 are active steps. So those are the steps that there's sort of like the working steps in AA. So I continue to take personal inventory. I meditate on a daily basis, and I'm of service to other people in the program. I have been through the steps a second time only because I had a new sponsor, and, you know, some sponsors have different ways of going about the steps. So when I was going over my step work with my new sponsor, like he had a lot of opinion about the way it was done. So we glossed over everything, and I did new material. So I guess I've done a second draft of the step work.
So you did say that 10 and 11 have been difficult steps for you.
I did?
Oh, I thought you did.
No. I was saying 10, 11, and 12 are working steps. Or
Oh,
like
working
the-
steps.
Yeah.
Okay. And are those steps that you continue to
Yeah.
work in? And how How are they working steps?
They're working, well, 10 and 11 is like, you continue to take personal inventory. So at the end of every day before I pray, I reflect on the day and, explore, if I was wrong or if I was selfish, if I was self-seeking. If any resentment comes up in the day, I journal about it. I talk to another person in AA or I talk to my sponsor.
Is that a daily practice for you?
It is
You find those helpful?
amazingly helpful.
Why?
Um, Surprisingly, journaling helps, and there was a question asked with the person before, like in terms of, working with clients, and it's like, I don't preach what I don't practice. And journaling has allowed me to like really breathe and not sit on things. So being able to, acknowledge a resentment and take accountability, that's also been sort of my leveling up in sobriety.
And if your probation is not terminated, how would that impact your rehabilitation efforts, your life?
It wouldn't. I would love to be able to move to Nashville. It wouldn't impact, it wouldn't change things. It would suck, quite honestly, but it wouldn't impact. I'd still be doing everything I need to be doing. And I'm grateful regardless. Just being able to, be granted the opportunity to sit here in front of everyone today and sit for a petition hearing and be eligible for that, I think is still huge for me.
Thank you. I don't have any other questions.
All right, thank you, Ms. Crawford. We will now open it up to the board for questioning. I will start with Mr. Ranasinghe.
Thank you very much for the testimony and for appearing here today. I have no questions.
All right, thank you. Ms. Uribe?
Good morning.
Morning.
It seems like there was there was a question about basically how have you addressed, let me see, hold on. It seems like some of the concerns are about the history of substance use and involvement with the law is how you perceive yourself, how others perceive you, and maybe even how you perceive the law. So I guess I'm just trying to get a clearer understanding of what work have you done to kind of resolve that or address it.
Which part? Sorry.
So it's basically how do you see yourself, so like I said, there's three parts, and then the other one I think specifically had to do with your parents, and then even the law, how you see the law. So any of the three you could start with.
Yeah. I think for the first time in my life, I can say I love myself. I'm thankful for everything, and I'm grateful for every day that I have on this earth, and I'm grateful for every day that I have sober. Skipping over in terms of law, it's another thing that I'm grateful for, honestly. Like, I understand that I have to learn things the hard way sometimes, and I am embracing the fact that, I'm not on this earth to break the law. And I'm just thankful. I'm thankful for, it's unfortunate the things that I've had to go through to get to where I am today, but I'm honestly eternally grateful for it. And the work that I've done, at least around my parents as well as other people in my life. I had a pretty lengthy amends list, and I got to make amends and take accountability for the behaviors and patterns that I've had in my life and the people that I've affected. Oh, sorry.
you may not have to answer this, but I was just curious
Yeah.
if your parents have been any part of that. So that might be something to consider. So,
My parents have been a
yeah,
part.
even part of the therapy, just, to be able to bring them into that as you address it.
I'm sorry, I'm a little confused.
So I don't know if sometimes they do conjoint, but I'm just saying, I don't know if that's been done, but
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Well, I mean, well, my dad passed.
Yeah.
My mom and I have done therapy together. Because she lives in Nashville, it's been over the phone, but my mom has definitely been a part of my therapy. My mom has also been a part of my recovery. You know, I talk to her about AA, I share about AA, she knows about my sponsor. She's met one of my sponsors before, so she's definitely been in my world of recovery. Not only have I had to make amends to her, but I've had to make amends to other family members as well. So I think everyone is really a part of my recovery.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Ms. Ortega?
Well, thank you for being here today. Just to piggyback a little bit on what you just mentioned. You mentioned your mom, and I know she's in Nashville, and you're aspiring, right, to move there and be with her. What does your support system look like in California at the moment?
Friends, my therapist, people in AA, my sponsor. Last person said their pet. I mean, definitely my pet as well. Yeah, I mean, I think my biggest support out here is the relationships that I've developed in AA. I mean, at any time of the day, I have someone that I can call and reach out to if there's anything I need to talk about. And I have a group of people. It's not just a few people. So, if one person doesn't answer and I'm struggling, I'm calling another person. My sponsor also lives like walking distance from my house. So, he's a musician, and when he's not sort of out and about, he's home, and I can literally walk to his house and knock on his door and hang out with him.
And clinically, in your professional setting, you're a director, assistant director. So, would you have like clinical support team, supervisor? Who would you talk to about cases, or what does that look like?
I work alongside my clinical director now. We also have a clinical supervisor who's at my work. So, we meet together almost daily to talk about our caseload. So, my company is split between 3 or 4 houses, and I'm a part of every meeting at each house. So if I have, any sort of caseload within the houses, it's all being talked about on a daily basis.
Okay, because then that level of support, right, that we have in agencies, when we shift to private practice, which I believe is what you would like in Nashville, right, or what one of your goals are, right, it would probably also require, right, that level of clinical support, right, because the work is triggering for
Absolutely.
any and all of us.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Also, to sort of piggyback on what you're saying, I mean, therapy has also been a great sort of resource in terms of not only talking about myself, but also talking about the things that come up in the room. You know what I mean? Like if there's any sort of countertransference that's happening, I can explore that with my therapist. So there's still that constant, like, it's not like the on-site clinical support that what it sounds like you're referring to, but, on a weekly basis, I'm able to talk about the things that come up in the room.
Okay, great. So, you mentioned about like going through AA, different cycles, right? We know that relapse is part of recovery, and it's an opportunity to learn about our triggers. Since you've had different, cycles of being in and out, right? In your recovery, how have you adjusted your relapse prevention plan? Because you've learned about like even your high risk right, being in high-risk situations and making choices. So what strategies have you developed to navigate those situations and how to create an exit plan, right? Because, I'm just wondering about what you've created newly
Yeah.
this time. Mhm.
Well, first off, I want to say this is really my first sobriety. I never wanted to get sober before this. So yeah, I may have sort of said to people around me, I'll be sober for this and that, but this is the first time in my life that I've actually committed to sobriety. And since I've committed to sobriety, I have not had a relapse. But speaking to your, the exit plan is, the beauty of AA, and especially, sadly because of COVID, like, there are Zoom meetings that happen every hour, on the hour, all day, so, thankfully, if I'm ever feeling, at risk or triggered, as you referred to it, is like, I can attend a meeting at any time. I can hop on a meeting, I can call a friend, I can call my sponsor, I can play the tape through. Yeah.
Okay. And okay, let's see. My last question. What are the structures that you have for like maintaining healthy habits and healthy choices?
Mhm.
I've heard you mention journaling as a tool.
Mhm.
What else?
Um, I'm big into fitness. So, I go to the gym pretty regularly. I mountain bike. I spend time with my dog. Um, I just joined like kickboxing. So I go to kickboxing a couple of times a week, and that's, the organized fitness. So again, sort of, when I think about AA as a fellowship, that's also a fellowship that I'm a part of, and the people that attend this and are a part of, drugs and alcohol is not a part of their life either. Um, so I feel like, staying connected in terms of people has really been helpful in me, regarding my sobriety, keeping myself level.
Okay, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
I'm complete.
All right, thank you. Mr. Huff?
Hi, Justin Huff. Thank you for being here, Mr. Cohen.
Yeah.
I have a few questions. First, there sometimes is a tendency for petitioners to attribute poor impulse control to not being sober. And I think you've very clearly identified that that is part of it, but that there is maybe poor impulse control or poor decision making in this sort of liminal stage of sobriety. And I'm wondering if you can talk more explicitly about how impulse control and decision making has changed since this newest or first phase of sobriety in your adult life.
It's interesting. Like, I mean, since I've, again, like I've experienced a lot of first things in this sobriety, and like something that I've been reflecting on more lately is like my relationship with God. And journaling and prayer has like really helped me. Like, I can't really recall a time, in this last few years that I felt impulsive. When I think about what life was like when I was drinking and using, or even like the night that I evaded from the police, like I couldn't tell you that I felt like that since then. And it's weird to say, quite honestly. Like literally just getting on my hands and knees at the end of the day or in the morning, or taking some time out into the day of just like breathing and talking to God or talking to my dad, like is really helped me kind of keep my cool. And then from what Abigail was saying, or what she was asking me about, what sounds like self-care is like, me utilizing kickboxing or the gym or mountain biking has also really helped me be calm.
Great, thank you.
Mm.
Also, addressing what Board Member Ortega was talking about, I'm wondering if you can speak a little bit more to how your actual clinical work may be different. And in particular, if we're imagining that we are a client seeing you now, how would our experience of you be different than if we saw you 3 years ago?
My level of connectedness, I think, with patients and clients that I work with now, again, like, I don't preach what I can't practice. And I feel that in my sobriety, I've been able to develop authentic and genuine relationships, and I believe that it's felt in the room. Maybe that sounds kind of vague, but I mean, that's what I can say, you know? And working with people that are newly in recovery, there is a level of like self-disclosure that I have with them. I mean, I don't share, you know, in detail what happened, but just being able to talk about what it feels like to be in that stage of like contemplation, or being sort of that considering, like, do I want to get sober? That's been really like helpful for me in working with people in recovery.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Thank you. Broadly, in these different approaches to therapy, you're describing not preaching what you don't also practice. And we also have this approach of meeting the clients where they're at and trying to identify the appropriate interventions for that specific client. How do you square these two together? How do they fit together?
You're saying meeting where they're at versus not preaching what I practice.
Yeah, or to put differently, meeting where they're at as opposed to only providing what you yourself have also done.
I don't know if I know how to answer that. Can you say it differently?
Sure. And did I hear you correctly that you have gotten EMDR certification? So that would be an example of, do you provide something that you also have practiced, that you've received? Do you only provide things that you also have received? I think that there's some.
Yeah, I mean, I think my modalities, I mean, I utilize something called internal family systems, and I use EMDR, and both of those have been practices that I've been helpful for me. I mean, of course, you know, some people don't like that stuff, and it's not like you need to do this because it worked for me. You know, I have an array of things that I use with clients. So I definitely meet clients where they're at, but I do, you know, I do typically, I think there's a level of like, when I'm bought into something, I think it feels differently in the room with clients as well. I don't know if that answers.
Yeah, that does. Thank you, Mr. Cohen. And then my last question, do you have an intent when you move to Nashville maintaining your California license?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay.
Unless I'm not allowed to, then I won't.
Great. Thank you very much. No more questions.
All right, thank you. Mr. Jones?
Thank you for being here. Do I understand you correctly that when you began your journey to become an MFT, that you were not sober?
Correct.
Okay. And you talked earlier about kind of feeling like, you know, not that you had a God complex, but you were God, like, you know, untouchable. So I'm curious as to how you came to this field, being that, you know, this is a very selfless job, yet you were engaged in a lot of, you know, drug use and behavior that was very internal.
Mhm.
So for me, there's a conflict. So can you give me a little bit of insight as to what brought you here?
Yeah. Really, as I grew up, I wanted to be a firefighter or a therapist. It's been something that I've wanted my entire life. You know, for me, drugs not only helped me escape me, but it also helped me connect to people seemingly. And becoming a therapist, you know, there's a lot of, I mean, it's all about human connection. And that is something I've wanted my entire life that I didn't have for many years growing up. I wouldn't be able to explain it that clearly many years ago, or have that understanding of like, why do I want to get into this field? But at the core, I mean, I enjoy human connection, and I like to get to know people on a genuine and authentic level. So that was a big reason why I entered the field.
Okay, and to follow that with kind of what Board Member Huff was talking about, has that changed now that you are sober?
Absolutely.
Tell me about that.
I mean, I'm clear-headed. I feel genuine and authentic, and I truly enjoy the connections and relationships I build with people, and it's not clouded by a substance or drink.
So the need to connect before was your lack of connection with other people.
Correct.
And now that you feel connected, you still have that need to connect, but it's not driven by the same impulse.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Strack?
Thank you for being here. I just have a couple of questions. I'm kind of trying to reconcile the 2020 incident with the officer with, in the context of your recovery. And am I understanding it, your explanation that it was kind of an impulsive choice that day? And can you just share more about what you were thinking when that happened and sort of what were you afraid of and what drove you to make that choice that day?
Yeah. Fear was definitely driving that decision. I was scared of disappointing my parents. I was scared of them cutting me off in some way. And for that, in my mind at the time, that was enough for me not to want to get caught.
Just one other question. You've mentioned a couple times about learning things the hard way, and do you still see yourself as in that way that you have to sort of make the mistakes, or are
No.
you able to kind of
Yeah.
pass that? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think reflecting on my history, like there's definitely sort of a clear sign as to like, I'm not built to break the law.
All right. Thank you. Those are all my questions.
Thank you. Ms. Friedman?
Good morning. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your story. I'm curious, as you talk about how you do your job now, whether you share your story with your clients.
I do to some degree. Absolutely. Not all the clients I work with are in recovery either. I share it if I feel like it's going to help the client open up in session, sort of a moment of connection. But I don't always share it, no. And it's not that I'm ashamed or embarrassed of my story. I just don't feel the need to reveal everything always with my clients.
So do you think it's helpful sometime for you to share your story?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You also said that at some point, and I'm not exactly sure at what point that was, you were sort of you were doing what they wanted you to do, but you didn't really care that much about it, and it wasn't really affecting you that much. Was that part of your probation, or was that your probation from the court? When was that you were just going through the?
I think that was
motions?
literally right at the beginning of my probation with the BBS.
So at the beginning of your probation, you were just going through the motions?
I was just going through the motions. I was sober. I was attending meetings. I was doing the psychotherapy, but I wasn't quite bought in or even wanted to believe that I had a problem.
When did it suddenly sink in, hey, this is real?
After I got my first sponsor. So maybe couldn't tell you for certain, maybe 3 or 4 months in.
And did it change any time after that, or was that it?
Oh, absolutely. You mean my belief?
From that point on, were you somebody who played by the rules, so to speak?
Well, no, clearly, because I got arrested in 2020 for that evading. So it was a poor decision in my sobriety. but I definitely recognized the fact that I had a problem.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Dr. Boyd?
Good morning, Mr. Cohen. Couple questions. Maybe I follow up with some of my colleagues up here. Can you speak a little bit to how you anticipate managing your transition to potentially being in Tennessee and also managing your license here in California in terms of, I guess what I'm trying to understand is, do you feel like you're going to be able to manage that well, given where you are currently and what you're hoping to continue to do in the future?
You're asking how will I manage the transition from California to Nashville?
Correct. And more specifically, managing the clients that you're going to continue to see in California. Like what plans do you have in place in terms of thinking through what that will look like? Because it sounds like, if I understand correctly, that should you be removed from probation, that there will be a somewhat quick transition to Nashville. Is that correct? Or is
Not that quick. No, I intend to stay at least another year here in California.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so maybe then you can speak to, have you given thought to how you would be able to manage your caseload here, your clients here?
I have not. I mean, I haven't. So the clients that I have in private practice right now, I probably will have to transfer to new people because the people that I'm seeing now are all in person and they do not want to do teletherapy. So I will most likely have to transition them to another colleague. In terms of the teletherapy thing, I haven't even started that yet.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
So maybe kind of a follow-up question to what you've already shared now a couple different times about the two separate instances between 2020 and before that. And you talked a little bit about sharing your story and some selective self-disclosure that you've given to your clients. I'm curious if you can speak more to how you decide when you share that, maybe the rationale that you use when you do share your story with those clients.
I mean, quite honestly, the clients that I typically do talk more about my experience are the people that are early in their recovery. So the people that are sort of teetering on the idea of, you know, do I have a problem? Do I not have a problem? Like, what is it like going to meetings? You know, I can talk to them about that, of like what it was like for me when I first started going to meetings, because, you know, I started going to meetings years and years ago and I absolutely hated it. You know, I was looking for the differences. I was looking for reasons why I didn't need to be there. And a lot of the people that, well, not a lot, but some of the people that I work with that are early in recovery have sort of that same perspective of like, you know, I'm different than them, you know, my problems are not like their problems, you know, or their concept of God and higher power. So, you know, I use a little bit of self-disclosure in talking about the idea of higher power and talking about sort of looking for the similarities rather than the differences. Yeah.
Maybe one last question is,
Absolutely.
you know, we saw some of the support letters that you've had in terms of your case. Maybe I would like to hear from you maybe a bit more about what have you taken away from your time in psychotherapy, and what is going to be different maybe this time going forward versus what it's been in the past?
Consistency is huge for me. You know, I have something that I'm committed to and that I love. You know, the joy I really get from being at meetings, from being with my sponsor, from really being in therapy. I mean, it's, you know, I don't have a great history of committing to things. And I feel like for the first time in my life, I've been able to commit to things and like really fall in love with them. So yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm digressing, but you know, what's going to be the same for me moving forward is like my commitment to these things, because I know that these things work for me and keep me healthy and stable and grounded.
Great, thank you. No more questions.
All right, thank you. Ms. Casares Willis?
Thank you for your story. I just want to follow up on something my two board members, these last two, just mentioned. going through the motions is not unique to your situation. I think as human beings, it's easy for anybody to go through the motions. And commitment, you said, was a big defining thing that you are using moving forward. How do you identify what you're saying versus doing to actually not just say it, but do it? Like the commitment is huge, right? Making the commitment and sticking to it. But in your mind, how do you identify, I'm just going to go through the motions, or I got to really focus? And how do you make the distinction in your mind?
I mean, something that comes up for me when you say that is like, I used to go to meetings and sit in the back. I used to go to meetings and just sort of, hand the paper into the basket, get it signed, and just kind of sit on my phone. I sit in meetings now and participate. I sit in therapy now and like challenge myself and work through the discomfort, and I talk about things when they come up. If there's something my therapist does that bothers me, I talk to her about it versus like, file it away and tell myself like, yeah, I'll deal with it another time. So again, like I participate in my sobriety and I'm of service rather than, going through the motions of like, yeah, I'll show up.
Okay, no, thank you. No further questions.
All right, thank you. Dr. Walker?
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Cohen, thank you for your testimony.
Thank
I
you.
have no questions.
Thank you.
Ms. Crawford, any follow-up questions? Mr. Cohen, your sobriety date, you said, is September 9th, 2019. You also testified that when you were first placed on probation, you were just going through the motions and that you did not really take the process all that seriously. Do you remember the date when you began to take the process more seriously?
I don't honestly remember the exact date.
Before or after your sobriety date?
After my sobriety date.
You recall just an estimate of how long after?
I mean, maybe a few months.
And you said it coincided with your first sponsor?
Yeah. Because again, I think, speaking to Yvette, I felt like I wasn't participating, and someone that I worked with, who has many years in sobriety, like, basically told me like, if you're gonna, he was like, if you're gonna go through the motions, you might as well get a sponsor as well. You might as well go through the motions and do these things to see if like, see what you can do, see if you have a problem, if there's an issue. And, working with my first sponsor, I was really able to recognize that this isn't the life I want to continue living.
All right. You heard Mr. Jones say when he called the meeting to order that the Department of Consumer Affairs is a consumer protection agency. And the board is particularly concerned with matters of public safety. So given your history, your not necessarily your criminal history, but history with substance abuse, what, if you're reflecting on your journey through this, what is the biggest challenge to your maintaining sobriety?
My biggest challenge for maintaining my sobriety.
Well, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Since your sobriety date, you have not relapsed, correct?
Correct.
Have there been occasions where you've been tempted?
I'm sure I've been tempted. I'm sure I've thought about it.
And what were those circumstances?
I guess feeling sad, feeling less than. I think something that comes up now is like social gatherings of like, seeing everyone drinking around me and like thinking like, oh, it might be nice to have a drink. But again, I mean, like I had mentioned at the beginning, my life would not be where it is today if I hadn't stopped drinking and using. I was very much living a stagnant lifestyle. And yeah, I mean, not only would my life not be where it is today, I mean, I think again, realizing that I'm not the one in control, and this is the first time in my life again that I really feel like I have a relationship with God, my higher power.
All right, thank you. Any further questions from the members of the board? Yes. All right, Ms. Friedman?
Just as the judge mentioned, consumer protection is utmost in everybody's thoughts here. And I'm curious, you said that none of your clients want telehealth, and telehealth ties into consumer protection. Why is that?
I think they just like the in-person. I mean, I for one prefer to see people face to face. I'm happy to offer teletherapy, but I know for me in my own experience and being a client with my therapist, I much prefer in person. I think there's a different experience being able to sit with someone in the room rather than through a screen.
Okay, thanks very much.
Dr. Boyd?
I guess along those lines, can you explain a bit more how you expect to be able to still see clients here in California while being in Tennessee if telehealth may not be the modality you may not prefer?
I don't mind using teletherapy. It's not something that I don't want to do. I'm happy to use teletherapy. My preference would be in person. Yeah.
Any further questions from the board? Ms. Crawford, anything further? All right. Well, Mr. Cohen, thank you for your testimony. You heard me say earlier, the board will deliberate today in closed session, so you won't get an answer today, but a decision will be issued within 30 days, and you'll be notified of that in the mail and someday in the future, okay?
Thank you.
All right, so thank you for your testimony and good luck to you.
Thank you.
With that, the matter is submitted, the record is closed, and we are off the record.
All right, thank you, Judge. We have a hard decision to make, friends. We can either take a 10-minute break now or jump to an early lunch. How are we feeling? Let's do the 10-minute break and then we'll do lunch later. Okay, sound good? Perfect. Abigail? Oh, you're voting?
I'm voting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Should we take a roll on it? No. All right, 10 minutes and then we'll be back for our next case. Thank you. All right, we'd like to reconvene. Judge, the floor is yours.
All right, the next matter on the agenda is the petition for early termination of Christian Conrado Davalos. Morning. All right, we're on record before the Board of Behavioral Sciences to review the petition for early termination of Christian Conrado Davalos. This is BBS case number 2002-02-00001820. Office of Administrative Hearings, case number 2023-100-282. Mr. Davalos, my name is Matt Block. I'm with the Office of Administrative Hearings, and I'm presiding over your hearing. As a preliminary matter, will all members of the board please identify themselves for the record, starting with the member who is appearing remotely?
Member Kelly Runesinger, public member.
All right, thank you. And going from there, the member appearing furthest to my right.
Eleanor Uribe, LCSW member.
Abigail Ortega, LCSW member.
Justin Huft, LMFT.
Chris Jones, LEP member and board chair.
Wendy Strack, public member.
Susan Friedman, public member.
Dr. Nick Boyd, LPCC member.
Yvette Caceres Willis, public member.
Dr. Annette Walker, public member.
All right, thank you. Mr. Davalos, I know you've sat through the first two petition hearings this morning, but just to recap, Ms. Crawford Ms. Crawford, may we have your appearance?
Anahita Crawford, Deputy Attorney General, appearing on behalf of the people of State of California pursuant to Government Code Section 11522.
Thank you. Mr. Davalos, Ms. Crawford will present your petition and give an overview of your case. You'll then have the opportunity to testify. And as you've seen, Ms. Crawford, the board, or myself might have some questions for you, okay? All right, Ms. Crawford, are you ready to proceed?
Yes.
Okay, please do.
The petitioner was issued a licensed marriage and family therapist license on October 9th of 2012. The license is current and will expire January 31st of 2024. An accusation was filed on March 30th of 2018. And the accusation alleged that the petitioner was convicted on October 16th of 2017 of driving under the influence with a blood alcohol level of 0.21. He also admitted to the special allegation that he had suffered a prior alcohol-related conviction in June of 2009. The conviction occurred after petitioner was arrested on August 22nd of 2017 when officers with CHP noted petitioner speeding, weaving within the lane, and straddling lanes. Petitioner had slurred speech, red and watery eyes, and an unsteady gait. He was unable to perform field sobriety tests safely and was arrested. The petitioner did enter into a stipulated settlement, which became effective November 1st of 2018. His license was placed on 5 years probation, and he was required to undergo weekly therapy, dependency support programs, substance abuse education, as well as abstain from alcohol and controlled substances and submit to biological fluid testing. A petition to revoke probation was filed on February 4th, 2020, alleging that a positive alcohol test on January 16th of 2020 had occurred. A decision and order was issued in the matter effective November 30th of 2020, where petitioner received a 2-year extension of probation. The probation is set to terminate on November 1st, 2025, and 2 years still remain on petitioner's probation. The petitioner has been fully compliant with probation since his positive test on January 16th of 2020 and is requesting early termination of probation with 2 years remaining. Your Honor, I have 5 exhibits that I'd like to introduce.
All right.
The first is the notice of hearing for today's hearing date. Would like to mark and introduce that as Exhibit 1.
Any objection, Mr. Davalos? Exhibit 1 is admitted.
Exhibit 2 is the license and registration history certification for the petitioner. I'd like to mark and introduce that. It is Exhibit 2.
Any objection? Exhibit 2 is admitted.
Exhibit 3 is a probation analyst memorandum to the board summarizing the petitioner's probation history. I'd like to mark and introduce that as Exhibit 3.
Any objection?
No.
Exhibit 3 is admitted.
Exhibit 4 is the petition for early termination of probation, along with the attachments that were submitted by the petitioner. I'd like to mark and introduce that as Exhibit 4, subject to administrative hearsay.
Any objection, Mr. Davalos?
No.
Exhibit 4 is admitted.
And Exhibit 5 contains the disciplinary documents, which are the proposed decision, the petition for modification of penalty in case number 2002-020-001820, as well as the proposed decision, petition to revoke probation, stipulated settlement, and accusation in case number 2002-018-000-366. We'd like to mark and introduce that as Exhibit 5.
Any objection?
No.
Exhibit 5 is admitted.
Your Honor, I don't have any other information or evidence to present at this time.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Crawford. Mr. Davalos, are you prepared to testify?
Yes.
Would you please raise your right hand, sir? Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you'll give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Would you please state and spell your full name for our record?
My name is Christian Davalos, CHRISTIAN DAVALOS.
All right. Thank you, sir. As you've seen with the prior 2 hearings, I am going to let you testify freely in the narrative. This is your opportunity to tell the board a little bit about yourself and what you think the board needs to hear to decide the case fairly, okay?
Okay. Just wanted to say thank you for the board for having me today. My name is Christian Davalos. I'm a recovered alcoholic. I've been sober for 3.87 years. That's 46.44 months.
total of 1,413 days.
Mr. Davalos, I'm sorry for the interruption. Could you speak up just a little bit?
Oh, okay.
I think we're having some trouble hearing you.
Okay, so once again, my name is Christian Davalos, recovered alcoholic. I've been sober for 3.87 years. That's 46.44 months, 1,413 days. I'm here requesting early termination. Based on the work that I've done, I feel like I've gotten to the point where this is hard to talk about. I'm more nervous than I thought I was going to be. Okay. So I've complied with all probation terms. I requested a petition for modification, which was granted. I completed my psychotherapy. It was deemed that I met my goals with the therapist that I was seeing. During the other time that the petition modification, my AA meetings were reduced to from 3 times a week to 1 time a week because of my home group is the Bridge Street group, which is an hour-and-a-half group, and it's a book study group. That AA group has been instrumental, and it's been the backbone of my sobriety. It's a very intense group. They do the AA work the way it was originally intended. We basically go page by page, and you're only able to speak if you've done the work. I've completed my 12 steps with Teddy, and I've been also, I'm also a step guide now at this point in time. Part of the 12-step process is that once you reach the 12th step, it's giving back. Once you have your freedom from alcohol, you try to give back to others the same gift that you've been given, just like Teddy helped me through the 12 steps to understand the reasons of my alcohol abuse. I'm helping out now by being a step guide. And so I meet with that person once a week for 2 hours. And then on Thursdays, that's when I have my AA group on Thursdays it's about an hour and a half. But just to give you a little bit of background to why I love this group, my sponsor, Teddy, he was sponsored by Dan Sherman, who wrote the Big Book Awakenings, this is the book that we use to do our work in the Big Book. And this is what we do. We annotate everything that we're learning into the Big Book. Dan Sherman's sponsor was Joe Hawk. Joe Hawk's sponsor was Don Fritz. Don Fritz's sponsor was Gary Brown. Gary Brown's sponsor was Paul Martin. And Paul Martin's sponsor was Paul Stanley, who was the first sober member of the AA group in Chicago. Paul Stanley's sponsor was Dr. Bob Smith, who was the American physician and surgeon who founded Alcoholics Anonymous with Bill Wilson, aka Bill W. And Dr. Bob Smith's sponsor was Bill W. So I was really impressed with the lineage that this group, that my sponsor Teddy has. I've also done, like I said, I completed my therapy, but I'm also went back into therapy. I'm working with a therapist doing DBT. The original therapist that I had helped me understand a lot of the reasons why I was drinking, due to just feeling bitter about certain things that happened in my life and whatnot, and why I was using that as a coping mechanism. And learned different coping skills with that therapist. I also done EMDR therapy later before my current therapist who's doing DBT because I still had a lot of, found out I had a lot of unresolved like childhood trauma, just, bullying and stuff like that, and just family of origin stuff. But I continue to pursue therapy because I feel like that's another component that's helping me in addition to doing the step work and being part of AA. I feel like at this point in my sobriety and everything that I've done here in the past and present, it's given me a good foundation. I'm on a good path. The 12 steps have definitely given me the structure, the tools, the support network that I need to maintain that sobriety. I feel like at this point, I want to show the board that this is something that's that I'm not going to falter from. This is something that I'm going to continue doing no matter what, because after losing my, after faltering and losing my license in 2020, I lost my dream job that I had as a medical social worker. I had been at that hospital for 10 years. So sorry. Uh, So that was a devastating loss. That was a devastating loss, and that's why I sought out better sponsorship with Eddie. That's why I really threw myself at what I needed to do, and that's something that I never want to go through again. Jeez, I told myself I was not going to do this. Sorry. So anyway, it's been devastating. It's been a devastating experience. And that's why I've been taking all of this seriously. And that's why I continue to seek out additional therapy, just to forgive myself. There's still some unresolved stuff that I know that I need to work on as far as, forgiving myself for some of the things that I've done, where I put myself. As a first generation American here, my dad came here from Mexico and he worked his butt off to give us a better future. And, I feel bad for, being in this predicament. I feel like I let down my parents. But those are some of the things that I'm working through, with the current therapist, just to, you know, some maintenance stuff that I need to do. I feel like that's just something that's ongoing that I'm going to continue to do. Um, so I know that I'm kind of rambling here, but I feel like at this point, uh, I love my home group where I'm at. I'm going to continue to contribute and to be active in that community. I have a fantastic support group there with the friends that I've made there. We have people from all walks of life there in that A group, from people that have been homeless, lost everything, to police officers, doctors. So it's an eclectic group. It's this kind of thing here. Alcoholism, it can affect anybody. It's. I used to think that I didn't have a problem because I wasn't on the streets, because I hadn't lost a job, and during the time that I was using, I was hanging around with nurses and doctors, and that's the way they blew off steam. Even when I was working in the probation department, my undergrad's in crime, and I was, in law enforcement too, back in the day. Um, that's what people did, drink, and it just became a pattern until it became something that became detrimental. And now I understand that. And, going through this whole process through therapy, ongoing therapy, going through this 12 steps and just working with people in my AA home group has just um, made me realize like how much I minimized things in the past. That's no longer the case. I take full responsibility for everything that's transpired and what's gotten me here. I really thank God for being able to find another job. After I lost my job at Cahuilla Delta, my old mental health agency took me back because I did good work there. They gave me another opportunity. And then I recently moved to a different job and I got hired For a school district where I primarily do crisis intervention. And that's what I do there. But I've been blessed too with the fact that this hasn't affected my capacity to find other employment that I feel better fits me. And with that in mind, I'm just going to continue to be part of the AA community and just continue the path that I've been put on. This experience has been both probably the worst thing, but the best thing as well, because who knows what trajectory I would have kept going on if it wasn't for the sanctions put on by the board. So to be honest, it's been a life-changing thing, and it could have been a lot worse. I could have hurt myself or hurt somebody else. Working in the ER when I was a medical social worker, I've seen the results of people drinking and driving. I've seen victims of that. And I wouldn't be able to live with myself if I know that I've gotten to that point, So I feel like at this point where I'm at, I'm just fully committed to my sobriety. And I'm looking forward to getting my fourth year chip. It's 1, 2, and 3 here. So I'm just going to continue down the path that's been set before me. And hopefully the board sees the work that I've done and where I'm at with the letters of support and my work performance. Able to grant me early termination. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Davalos. Ms. Crawford.
Thank you. Mr. Davalos, at the time you were placed on probation, did you have a discussion with your probation monitor about the consequences of violating probation?
Yes, I did.
What was your understanding of what some of the consequences were?
If you violated probation, if you failed to abide by probation terms, you could have your probation suspended and license revoked.
And understanding those consequences, why do you think that that was not enough of a hindrance to your decision to drink alcohol in 2019?
Yeah, I was in Cancun on vacation with my ex-girlfriend at the time, and it was after I faltered. I faltered. I relapsed. Being around there in Cancun, where we were at the on a beachfront, everybody was celebrating, and I gave in. And that's what made me realize at that point. That's when it really hit home, where I was like, I have no control over this. How could I? How could I put myself in a position where, or even give into that, knowing the seriousness of the consequences that I could have been facing at the time? And I think it wasn't really until then that I fully realized that I was powerless over alcohol, like we say. I had some sponsors up until that point, but it wasn't to the level of sponsorship that I had until after. I think it was until then that I was still kind of fighting the notion that I did have an alcohol abuse problem up until that point. And it took that to make me realize, how bad this was, that I was able to make such a mistake that I put my career in jeopardy with a job that I thought I was going to retire from.
So prior to that positive test, had you stayed sober from alcohol?
Yes, I had. I'd stayed sober, during the probation. Yeah, during the probation, yes, I have. But I don't think, to be honest, I was still fighting the notion that I could possibly have an alcohol abuse problem, or that I could consider myself an alcoholic at that point. I was still trying to reconcile that. Am I or am I not? Look at some of these people that are here. I'm not like them. I'm not this. Well, come New Year's, that really showed me where I was at. That really made me realize, that I had been kind of lying to myself and trying not to admit that I did have, that I was an alcoholic, that I was using alcohol to kind of cope with things that had been going on in my life.
You posed the question to yourself, how can I put myself in that position knowing the consequences? And that's still my question. What have you discovered about why you did put yourself in that position knowing the consequences?
I would say up until that point, like I said, I don't think I really considered myself being an alcoholic up until that point. I don't think that I gave it the serious consideration that I have now after going through this, after losing my license, losing everything.
And what does that mean to you that you, up until that point, you hadn't considered yourself being an alcoholic?
I think I was thinking that I just didn't see myself as being part of when I thought of the term alcoholic, I thought of the person that was completely, waking up with DTs, drinking on the job, or, you know, um, ending up homeless, losing jobs, poor job performance. And I didn't see myself that way. I just thought, hey, I enjoy drinking and having friends, socializing, because that's what everybody around me did. Um, I didn't think that I had a problem to that extent because everybody, where I worked at in high pressure, in the medical field, when everybody got together after work or whatever, that's what we would do. It's socialize via drinking. It almost seems now that I see that everything revolves around that. And it wasn't until that day where I said, that's when I realized that that's me. Just because I don't meet the criteria of what I thought an alcoholic was, doesn't mean that I wasn't one. And that's when I really accepted the fact that this is serious. This is
Did you have a sponsor at that point?
no. I had two sponsors prior to Teddy, but the sponsorship quality and the other AA groups, it's nothing like it is now. Teddy knows that book back and forth. He can recite, he can spit out passages and phrases, and I mean, he's incredible. Up until that point, it was like, oh, read this and we'll discuss this. There was no structure to it, or like I can't meet. Um, it, the difference between my home group and this sponsor, Teddy, my sponsor, is night and day. It's way more accountability, super knowledgeable, super serious. It's a whole. It's like an elite. I consider it like an elite AA group, whereas other AA groups, like I put in my statement, it's more about maybe war stories, sharing things, what they've been through, but in the Bridge Street program, uh, it's going through the steps. It's dissecting each page line by line. Every week that we go there, as a matter of fact, I have a meeting tonight after this. We're on page 16. So we do everything line by line. And it's just the accountability and the intensity is a lot higher there.
So I want to follow up again on your Cancun vacation. You were on a regular drug test regimen, right?
Correct.
So you understood that you would be drug tested at some point when you came back from that vacation,
Mhm.
right?
Yes.
And so knowing that if you drug tested positive, it would risk your license, regardless of putting aside your alcoholism, knowing that drug testing positive could cause you to lose your license, why was that not enough of a deterrent for you to drink?
It was in the heat of the moment. It was just surrounded by everybody that was at the restaurant. Everybody was passing around drinks, shots, or whatnot. I managed to hold off, and then it just happened. I have there is no logical answer to that.
Mhm.
Other than I just gave in, I faltered. I messed up. I mean, that was a horrific mistake on my part, and there's no way to excuse that. It's something that I regret doing, and it was just in the moment, and I gave in.
And other than now having your sponsor, Teddy, in your life, walking through the steps with you, what is different about your life now where situations like that wouldn't make you falter?
That's a good question. Because at this point, after going through the steps with Teddy and being in the AA group, one of the misconceptions that they say too, like, let me explain something. There's a school of thought that they say that, if you're an alcoholic or whatnot, you should stay away from everything. You shouldn't put yourself in a position where there's going to be any alcohol. You should run away from stuff like that. But when you're truly recovered, when you truly understand where you're at, that there's 12 steps and God has helped remove you from the obsession of alcohol, of course you're not going to want to put yourself in situations for bad situations if you can avoid it. But like when if we have a meeting with friends or whatnot for dinner, somebody's having a drink, that doesn't faze me at all. It doesn't interest me one bit, because at this point in my life, in my sobriety, that is not something that's even on my radar. And everybody that I do know that are my true friends that are in my support network, they know that I don't drink. And my core group of, like, when I used to have the friends from the hospital, those are gone. I'm with people that understand, that love me, that support me, and they understand that I don't drink. And they don't ask, hey, you're not going to have one? No, they understand. But at this point, the thought of even drinking when I'm around, like I say, you go to a nice restaurant and somebody orders a Chardonnay, or somebody orders a Merlot or a Scotch or whatever. Hey, I'm just going to have my bubbly water with some cranberry. That's about it. It doesn't affect me whatsoever at this point.
And what put you went from in 2019 being in Cancun, everybody, was having a nice time drinking, to now you can be in those situations and not give in.
Yeah.
What was the process of going from you gave in to now being around alcohol doesn't even faze you to give in?
Because I don't think up until that point I was fully bought in that I was an alcoholic. I like the gentleman before me said, sometimes we just go through the motions, not being fully taking stock, not really seriously looking inward. It wasn't until losing my license and seeing, like, how in the world did I make that choice or allow myself? That's when I started really kind of questioning myself. And then that's when I started finding, like, more that's when I started really looking for more higher level of sponsorship and committing myself more to the Bridge Street group because that's an hour and a half. And we lose a lot of people in that group because it is intense. After what happened in losing my license, and that's what it changed everything. That was the catalyst. Unfortunately, sometimes for some people, it takes something more drastic to occur in order for you to dig deep or to really reflect and look deeper into yourself as to what's really going on.
Was it the consequences of your actions that fit better with your definition of an alcoholic?
I think what I realized is like any sane person would have not done that. And one of the tenets that we do talk about in AA is that when they vet you to do the 12-step process, when you go through this process, when your sponsor asks you, you know, have you done this? Have you done this? You know, like me doing that is illogical. That just showed me that like they say, I do have an allergy to alcohol, is that, or that craving was there, or that obsession, or whatever you want to call it, that it overrode the logic of it all. Why did I give in? So in doing the step work, I mean, I finally, when reading the big book and seeing some of the things that other people have gone through, I kept seeing, I've done that. I've done this. I fit that bill. And there's different degrees to this. You know, like I said, we have professionals in there that I never thought that, you know, that struggle with the same thing. And they also didn't believe that they were in the same boat. But, you know, discussing this, you know, making these decisions, knowing that there's going to be this consequence, why would you do that?
What were you doing? What were your job duties at the job that you lost as a result of this positive test?
So I left a counseling agency working with children, and I was there from 2005, 2010. And then my brother, who was also working with me, went to the hospital. He has this MSW, and at the time, that hospital was hiring MFTs as well. So as a medical social worker, I was providing pretty much discharge planning, connecting people to resources. If you were homeless, you know, trying to find you shelter, elderly people, looking for assisted living, people with substance abuse, linking them to Pine Recovery, substance abuse places. I was working in the ER, just dealing with, you know, GSW, gunshot wound victims, or, you know, just as a medical social worker there, my job was to provide people linkages with resources that they needed, or providing some type of, you know, solution focused kind of some level of counseling, depending on what they were coming in for. Helping families figure out what the next step was going to be for their loved ones if they were facing end of life issues, discharge planning, being an advocate for the families during family doctor conferences to determine what the next step was going to be in care, that were in the ICU or the step down ICU. So I pretty much dealt with a variety of hospice. So I just did a lot of different things, and it was a job that I was great at and that I thoroughly enjoyed doing. That's a job that that I would always tell people, this is where I'm going to retire from.
And when did you begin working with Tulare County? Is it Office of Education?
Yeah, that's August of 2023.
So what did you do between working at your previous job and working at Tulare County?
The mental health agency that I was working at from 2005, 2010, I always kept a relationship with them. I was working full-time as a medical social worker, so I was working 4/10s, and on my days off, I would go back to the counseling agency and just do assessments. So because I had a good working relationship with that agency, they knew what my situation was. They brought me on as a master's level case manager, and I was helping with quality improvement. So I wasn't doing any type of therapy or any type of counseling. They knew that they were hoping that I would get my license reinstated and then my job duties would change. But so I was there, an assistant to the quality improvement manager there at the agency.
What was that agency called?
Tulare Youth Service Bureau.
And that's different from the agency that you left as a result of,
Yeah, that's Kauai Delta Hospital.
what was it?
Kauai Delta Hospital.
How do you spell?
Kauai, yeah, that's Kaweah Delta.
How long had you worked at, or you said 10 years, from what years did you work at Kauai Delta Hospital?
2010, 2020.
Okay, and between 2020 and August of 2023, you went back to Tulare Youth Services?
Yes, I got picked up again by them. I think it was in October of 2020. Because they knew me well, they had confidence, and like the clinical director and the CEO said, "Hey, Christian, we value you. You have a lot of experience. We believe in you. We're going to give you, a chance here. And we'll just see how everything pans out with your license. But you do have a job here."
In um, in May of 2022, you filed a petition for modification. And at that time, you had stated that you'd been accepted into the University of Massachusetts Global Master of Social Work program and were beginning coursework the
Yes,
following.
that is correct.
And is that something you've continued to pursue?
No, it was too tough. The level of work, okay. By that time, 2022, okay, by that time, I was on the assessment team at the agency. And the level of work at a community mental health agency, it's a lot. It's a tough gig. Kudos to people that can do their whole career at a community mental health agency. I did try to start the MSW program. I did a semester, got 2 A's, but it was way too hard to balance the level of coursework and the paperwork that I would have to take home. It was too much. I started the MSW program in order to get my MSW and maybe try to get back into a hospital, but I don't know. It was just too difficult. It was just too much. Plus doing the probation terms and all that and all this, it was just too much on my plate. It was just too much. I couldn't handle the pressure with that.
But in 2023, in July, it looks like you did pursue your teaching credential?
No, what it is that when I received my master's at Fresno State, I decided to get my PPS credential. I did extra coursework because I said, hey, maybe this therapy thing may not, pan out. I just wanted to have another option. And so I hadn't renewed it because I thought I was never going to contemplate getting a job at a school as a school social worker. I thought I was going to be at Kauai Delta forever. I thought I was going to retire from there. So I submitted all my paperwork. Just like the PPS credential has the Center for Teacher Credentialing. So I had to go through that whole process, and I was able to get my PPS credential reinstated after I provided all documentation and went to a similar court hearing there. So that's been reinstated.
Okay, that's your Pupil Personnel Services
Services credential that allows me to be able to apply as a school counselor, academic counselor, or school social worker, which is something that I am interested maybe in pursuing in the future.
And that's something that's separate and apart from what you're currently doing at your work.
Correct. Right now, I'm working for the school district, as part of the mobile crisis unit. Yeah, mobile crisis unit.
So that was a license, or that was a credential you previously had, you just reinstated it?
Correct, because I never renewed it. But then in renewing it, of course, they ask questions. Have you had any other license suspended, revoked? Have you been in trouble? So, of course, I had to answer in the affirmative and then provide all necessary documentation. That was quite a bit of work, and appear before their board and to also explain what had happened and what I've done to, better myself. And I prevailed, and they were able to reinstate it.
Now, after your positive test in 2020, the board allowed you again to remain on probation with an extension of 2 years to ensure that you would be safe to practice.
Correct.
And why are you asking to terminate the probation while 2 years still remain when you agreed to that 2-year stipulation?
Because I feel like at this point, it was a harsh lesson that I learned. I mean, I've done the work. Like I said, I petitioned for modification of probation with the psychotherapy. The judge at that time felt like I had that I had provided the necessary proof to show that I had rehabilitated sufficiently to not need therapy anymore, and to have my weekly meetings reduced to only once a week. I feel that with the work that I've done with Teddy and the work that with the AA group that I have right now, the support network that I have, that that I'm s- uh, that I'm at a point where this will not happen again. Um, I feel that with everything that I've accomplished and with my 12 steps, and then being a step guide, and then using my network and having all these people, my mom, my dad, my brother, my close friends, at this point, I feel that I'm rehabilitated, that I've have all the tools necessary to be safe and to not engage, to not relapse.
What is your plan if the board does terminate your probation early?
Um, Definitely continue with my AA group and try to get a little bit more involved in the community. Um, it's been a hard transition from this one job to the other, because I know that I've had a lot of anxiety to making sure that I do a good job and whatnot. But my my goal or my intent is to continue with the AA group, continue to help being a step guide, because what we're doing there is that we move people in a cohort to move through the steps. So, and then I serve as a step guide to people that are wanting to go through the work. So I plan on continuing to do that and continue with my own psychotherapy. Um, I feel like that's also like a big part of it, just to continue. That's always a work in progress, I think.
So what happens to your work as a step guide or your involvement in the the AA meetings as a step guide? What happens if you relapse?
Well, if I relapse, I got to start all over. At that group that we're in, if you relapse, you're back to ground zero. They don't allow you to maintain that position anymore, because then you got to go through the steps again. They're pretty strict about that.
Have you seen other members relapse in your group and what happens?
You know what? My group is blessed to the fact that we have a lot of people with a lot of sobriety. I'm talking 20 plus years. I don't recall seeing anybody. Usually what happens is that we get a lot of new people. They see how intense this program is because they have to do the book work and there's a lot of homework, quote unquote. So I see a lot of people just not being able to follow through the steps. So we lose a lot of people. But as far as for people that have been in the program for some time and that have been following this step and consistently go to that group, I haven't seen anybody relapse.
What today are the consequences to not being sober do you see in your life?
You mean just in general or like under probation or just in general?
As of this moment, while you're still on probation, while you're going through your AA and being a step guide, what are the consequences that you see if you lose your sobriety?
That would be the end of everything. I mean, at this point, there's no coming back. If I were to do that, I mean, another loss of license, I mean, I don't think I could bounce back from that. That's one of the things that we talk about in AA. This is life or death for us. You know, this is super serious. Relapsing now at this point would undermine everything that I've worked so hard to clob, you know, to fight tooth and nail to get back to a position, you know, that I feel happy in. I don't want to lose that. I don't ever want to be back into the position that I was in 2020. That was the most emotionally devastating event that I think that I've ever gone through. And I don't want to put myself in that position ever again.
Thank you. I don't have any other questions.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Crawford. We'll open it up to questions from the board, starting with Mr. Ranasinghe.
Hello, Mr. Davalos, can you hear me?
Yes.
Mr. Davalos, I'd like to thank you for your heartfelt testimony, and I appreciate the vulnerability you've brought to the board. In listening to your testimony, it appears that there are really two dimensions at work. One is your progress in substance abuse, and the other appears to be the therapeutic dimension that you discussed is forgiveness of yourself. From the context of your testimony, it appears to me, and I might be wrong, that there still appears to be some significant work to be done therapeutically to help come to grips with the loss of your job as a medical social worker and also sort of the grieving process and forgiveness that you have to undergo. Is that correct, or am I just kind of off base?
I think I agree with you on the forgiveness aspect, because that was something separate that when I did the initial psychotherapy was discussing, you know, what are the triggers, what happened. The first time I went through therapy, through the board mandated therapy, was to discuss, you know, like what are some of the things that made me use alcohol to cope, right? So I was able to complete that and address those issues. And then I sought additional therapy because I did have a lot of remorse for what I had done, you know, for feeling bad about the choices that I had made. So that's why I have continued therapy to work on that. I think you're correct in the fact that that's why I want to continue therapy. And that's why I chose this one therapist with a DBT, you know, to use, you know, your wise mind, you know, don't use your emotional mind. There's your logical mind, your wise mind, emotional mind. Things happened and radical acceptance, you know, it's just come to terms with, you know, this happened. That's not you anymore. Let's start moving in this path of like, what are you doing today to be a better person? What are you doing now? You know, focus on the positive things that you're doing now and helping others, being of service, being there more for your family. But I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah, that is something that I'm working on.
It does, Mr. Davalos. And I did want to ask just one more question. In looking over your probation, if the board did not grant an early termination, are there modifications to your probation that would make it more easier, or how do I say this, would be less stressful to your workload as it is now, to give you some room to breathe therapeutically and engage in your substance abuse? Are there any modifications you think of that the board could make in that regard?
I had modifications as for what purpose? As in to allow me to do.
Is there anything that thinks about your probation that would make it easier to do? Or is it just early termination?
It's just early termination, because at this point it's only one AA meeting a week. I'm going to continue that. Before it was 3. That was tougher because of the workload that I had at the agency. With this new job, I don't take as much work home. As a matter of fact, I don't take work home. So right now it's the probation isn't taxing like it was before.
Okay. Thank you. That's really all the questions I have. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you. Ms. Uribe.
I'm sorry, I wanted to ask, are you still testing?
Yes.
You are.
4 times a month. Well, that's a frequency that it should be 4 times a month.
Okay. And I don't know if you, relapse plan? You have a relapse plan?
Pretty much I continue to have contact with my sponsor. I'm sponsoring other people, well, the STEP guide. I have a good network, support network through the AA. As a matter of fact, I'm supposed to see one of my buddies from the program and talk to him today. Well, I always keep, and I'm part of a phone call list too, that whenever we have
What?
part of a phone call list. So like if there's anything that I need to discuss or somebody needs to reach out to me, we keep in touch with each other that way. But if I have any issues or anything to that effect that I'm struggling with, I can always Teddy, my sponsor, I continue to talk to him even though we finished the steps, but he continues to be a resource. And then meeting there weekly at Bridge Street, that's that's a major support. My brother, my parents. I mean, I have a lot of people in my corner that I know that if I'm struggling with something, there is somebody always to talk to. So, and I, not to keep things to myself. If I'm having a bad day, or if I'm thinking, if I need help with anything, I know that there's somebody that I can talk to and reach. And if it came down to an emergency situation where I was like contemplating, oh my gosh, did I feel like drinking or something, which has not been the case, it would be Teddy or anybody on the phone list that they're there for that purpose, is that we have a list of people that you can call if you're contemplating, if relapse is on the horizon or something to that effect.
So you mentioned a lot about the Bridge Street group, Teddy. You do have your mom and your dad, and I think your brother. But you'd also had some losses as far as some colleagues that you used to work with, and I was just wondering how else your social circle has changed.
Good question. I really think that since this whole process, my spirit, God, okay. So with this new job that I have a really tight team. There's 4 people on my team, and the best people ever. I mean, they know my situation. My little social group has changed, but I used to be embarrassed to talk about what happened. They all know that I'm here for this hearing. I confided in them and I told them, hey, this is what's going on. And they're totally supportive and accepting. So social group, it's everybody's positive. I mean, it's no, they understand my situation. They fully support me, and I'm blessed to have the people that I do have right now, especially at work and my supervisor. I mean, they all know what's going on, and they all text me today in the morning, wishing me luck, and you know, wishing me the best. And s- social network is just it's positive. It's not negative. It's not like the people that I had before. Basically, like at the hospital, that was a whole different deal.
Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you for being here and for your testimony, Abigail Ortega. Um, can you say a little bit more about how this experience has impacted your role as a clinician? I know you had mentioned like earlier about the insight about I didn't think that was me, right?
Right.
This could happen to me. So like how does it now inform the work?
And this is where I differ a little bit because I'm saying, like I said, I do mobile crisis. It's it's more like kind of like solution. It's more in the moment. It's not like regular weekly therapy. But um how this has helped me is like I feel like I'm way more empathetic to other people's. I, I feel like I've become more empathic with people now that everything that I've gone through, like feeling other people's struggles and pain when I work with other people, like in crisis, because we deal with from elementary up to 22 years of age that we respond to. Um, I just feel ever since this happened, I guess before I used to like suppress a lot, because of things that have happened when I was younger, being a young dad too, 19, um, some not so great relationships early on in my life. I think in going through this whole process has just, it just made me more receptive, more, I don't even know how to explain it. Like it just emotionally is just more, just able to connect more with people, especially during crisis situations, that I'm really good at going in there, building trust and rapport and kind of de-escalating the situation. And, nobody's perfect, you know, yeah, that nobody's perfect. And I think that this has made me a lot more humble, and it's just made me more empathetic to people's situations, whereas before I was more like, there was a degree of separation, more, more clinical, more whatnot. But after everything that I've gone through, I just feel like I'm way more present there and feeling what people are going through, and being able to help out. I feel like that's just touch the more human side, I guess. It's hard to explain, but just more aware of being more empathetic.
Okay. Um, and how do you have like practices for assessing daily, to reflect on how you're doing emotionally and mentally, so that you can identify patterns and address, issues before they escalate?
Yeah, that's why we do steps 10 and 11.
Okay.
I submitted that with the where I try to do this. You should be doing this on a daily basis. Is just kind of think about what you did throughout the day. Continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, fear. Um, it's basically like taking daily inventory, and like at night, it's like, when was I resentful? Was I selfish? Was I afraid? Um, so this is just kind of like an ongoing checklist. This is the ongoing work that you do. And if there is something that's popping up that I can't let go of, that's when I reach out to Teddy and say, hey, I'm having problems with this. Can you kind of help me out and process this? What's going on here? Why am I feeling resentful with this? I'm feeling fear, or like I'm feeling some bitterness, this is just an ongoing inventory to make sure that you're still on the right path, and you're not, so you don't slide back into restlessness, irritability, and discontent, because that's a spiritual malady that a lot of people with alcoholism have, is that that's what makes them unhappy, and that's what makes them use sometimes. So using this is a daily reminder to just be on top of what you're feeling and to reach out if you need help.
Okay, and what are your short-term and long-term goals to like maintain motivation and focus?
Well, like I said, I just continue to be part of the group and try to expand maybe more my involvement in being, because Bridge Street does a lot of other outreach. There's maybe later on in a little bit, not quite there yet, doing speaker meetings too, like sharing my story. There's also like, I think Pine Recovery, which is a recovery center for men, on Friday nights. They have speaker nights too, where you can go and kind of share your story. So maybe trying to span into some of those other things, and just being more involved in the community with Bridge Street.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Huff?
Hi, Justin Huff. Thank you, Mr. Davalos. So I have a few questions. First, you were initially asked to go to dependency support groups twice a week. Is that right?
3 times.
And then in September 2020, it was increased to 3 times. Is that correct?
I think it was, I don't recollect. It was 3 times. Okay, so yeah, so
So at some point, it was more than once. When did it drop down to once a week?
that's when I petitioned for modification.
And given the rest of your testimony and narrative in the packet about how you wanted, and please correct me if these words don't describe what you're describing, wanted more intense, more structured AA. Why did you ask for fewer dependency meetings?
Because the Bridge Street program itself provides all that by itself. Other AA groups do not have the pattern or don't have the foundation or the structure that Bridge Street has. And not to minimize other AA groups, okay? To me, this group was the best because they follow it. They implement the big book the way it was originally founded by Bill W. The way it was originally. Other AA groups don't have the level of structure and don't have the level of accountability that this does. So for me, this one group is what provides everything. I could go to 2 other groups, but it's not the same. Because here you can only speak on the page that we're discussing unless you've done the work. And it's talking about how that has impacted you instead of just going off on tangents about what we say war stories.
Sure.
So this is just way more specific and more.
Okay, great. Thank you for that clarification. When you were in Cancun, were you also in AA?
Say again?
Were you attending AA meetings, not in Cancun, but during the time you were in Cancun?
No, I wasn't.
Was that part of your, what you were expected to do during your probation?
I don't.
Dependency support groups?
I don't think so. I don't know. I don't know.
Can you tell us a little bit, can you give us an example of some environment that you were in recently, the most recent environment that was stressful enough that prior to being in Bridge Street group, you may have engaged in drinking?
That's an interesting question because yeah, I met with a group of Veterans Day. Was it this past week, Friday? I met with a group of people. They went to, it's a bar restaurant, but they know, like, well, 2 people know of my situation. The other 3 didn't. So they had drinks. I just ordered my, usual, which is sparkling water and cranberry. And but it wasn't stressful. Like I said, at this point in my sobriety, at this point where I'm at, it doesn't bother me seeing people drink. And when they do ask me, "Hey, how come you're not drinking?" I'm like, "I don't drink." You know, I just don't. I don't have to tell them the whole reason why, but I just flat out tell them, "Hey, I just don't drink. I'm fine with this."
Can you provide an example of a stressful environment you were in recently that would have previously caused you to drink?
Jeez. I haven't been to any major get-togethers or parties or anything like that where I'm surrounded with a bunch of people. Oh, I did attend like a UFC party and with my brother, and he still works at the hospital, and they were all drinking. But I mean, once again, it's not stressful. They're like, "Hey,
Sure.
hey, you want some, and you want to drink?" No, I just want water. That's
Sure.
it. To be honest, I don't know how if I'm adequately able to convey that at this point, being around alcohol, it just doesn't elicit that response because of the work that I've done here with the Bridge Street program. Like, and I know the severity of just the consequences of that. But if anything, it's more this, just
Sure.
to coming to terms with that's not somewhere I want to be anymore.
If it doesn't elicit that response, why is there a need for ongoing dependency support groups?
To maintain, because as with anything, you have to continue exercising that muscle. You atrophy if you don't continue with that support. It's and especially with this, if you're truly have an addiction, I feel like you need to continue to do the work.
Yeah, great. Thank you. My last question, throughout this discussion, there's been some focus and in your written narrative on a lot of external environmental stressors, being in Cancun, having AA group content, maybe be a mismatch from what you're hoping for, discussion on sponsorship quality, having more supportive coworkers. I'm wondering if you can spend a little bit of time focusing on the internal factors that have changed that allow you to overcome what may be out of your control, the environment you're in.
Well, I think it's been a combination of through therapy and doing this work, coming to expect, number one, hey, I am an alcoholic and I need to watch out for this stuff. I think that's been the biggest cognitive shift that I didn't have before. Saying, hey, if I do engage in drinking, this is going to happen again. Am I going to be able to stop at one or two? I don't want to find that out. You know what I mean? At this point, I don't. I think that's been the biggest shift is that it's just been this paradigm shift for me, and then continuing to do work, with therapy and stuff, just because I worry about the future. I worry about like, retirement, and I worry about certain things that are stressors and whatnot. But I feel like this is like a two-prong approach. It's like continuing doing the AA support stuff and then continuing with therapy just to deal with, daily life stuff, daily life concerns about the future or whatever, retirement, mortgages being 8%, whatnot. But I think this is what's helped me realize that that's something I need to be always on guard for, to not let my guard down, not say, hey, you know what, I think I've had enough of AA. I think I got it. Thank you. Thank you for everything. I feel like that's going to have to be a lifelong thing.
Great. Thank you again, Mr. Davalos. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Jones? Again, thank you for being here. Your current position is with the County Office of Ed, and you're
Yes.
on the mobile crisis team?
Yes.
Do they require you to be licensed, or will your PPS suffice?
No, that you have to be licensed.
Okay. So within that job that you're doing, you're obviously dealing with crises in schools. So you're seeing kids on a short-term basis, managing the crisis, and then
Yes.
moving on to the next case. And you're not doing any other therapeutic work outside of that job?
No.
Okay. Is your plan to maintain that position, or are you going to go back to private practice and start working with clients again?
Private practice has been something people always have told me about. I'm not too sure about that. I was I was thinking maybe looking into like a school job, like a school social worker, school counselor, and that would be more counseling based. So I just got to kind of see through EdJoin. I'm investigating to see what positions are available with somebody with an MFT and PPS credential. So if it is a school counselor position, that would entail more traditional type therapy, um, or the but that's the extent. That's the extent. Either school based, private practice, maybe something. My brother does it. He keeps telling me to like, hey, come and do it. But he works three on, four off, so he has a lot more, free time. So I mean, I don't know if I'm gonna do that on the side. I don't know if that's in the cards.
So the reason I ask, and not to minimize crisis, because I'm a school psychologist, so I do crisis on a regular basis. But there's a difference between doing the short-term triage work with kids and then doing more long-term therapeutic work with them. In not that I'm asking you to look into a crystal ball, but if you're going to engage in, we're tasked with, consumer protection. When you start to move into longer term care for your students, your clients, how do you see your past experiences impacting that when you're dealing with the emotional work that has to go into working with kids and families that is more of a long-term process that you carry with you? And do you think that that would be a trigger with regards to, your past experience?
So you're asking if having like longer term clients could potentially trigger me into possible relapse, or
Sure. With
because
with triage in a team, you move from case to case, right? And you put one away and you deal with the next one. When you're dealing with with more longer term clients that you're seeing on a regular basis, then you're carrying that with you through your job. Do you feel like you are protected enough with the supports that you've gone through to be able to manage that, or do you feel like that could be a triggering event as you move into that position?
I understand. Okay, I understand that. I think at this point, because I have gotten the support that I currently have, and I'm able to discuss it with other people, whereas before I didn't have that, I feel way more secure and comfortable knowing that if I do have a caseload, like in the future, become, doing being a school counselor or whatnot, um, I have the support necessary to be able to maybe talk to other colleagues, consult with other people, because I know what this is all about. The drinking. I know that I wouldn't use that as a coping mechanism. It would be more like, you know, using maybe continuing with therapy, like I'm doing right now. But I think at this point, since I'm more aware of what's caused, the drinking, and that I'm better able to get in front of it if I do start like saying, "Hey, this is getting a little much. Who do I talk to?" I think I'm able to just better manage that and handle that because I do have a wide network of people that I can talk to and people that I can consult with. That's what's awesome about working, um, where I work at, because you have your supervisors that you can consult with, very supportive at school sites too. You always have somebody that you can consult with if you're running into issues, if you're feeling burned out or whatnot. And then if that's causing issues for me, like say on a personal side, like with like relapse issues or anything like that, I can always talk to Teddy or to other people in my support network. Because I mean that's always going to be something that will probably be there. I mean, like knowing that I have that support network is very reassuring. That I know that I have that support that I could reach out to at any time. So I think I'd be able to handle that if it was a longer term situation. Because what I do right now too is it's pretty stressful too, because our we're a small team and we respond to multiple things, and some of them have been pretty hardcore. And then we go to their houses, we go to people's homes too. It's not just at schools and at a controlled environment. We also go into people's homes. So I mean, I've already seen a couple things, but been able to manage okay.
Perfect. Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you. Ms. Strack?
Just want to thank you for being here, and I think my colleagues have asked the questions I had, so I have no questions at this time.
Ms. Friedman?
Thanks so much for being here and for telling us your story. You talked a lot about working at Kaweah Delta. Where exactly is Kaweah Delta?
That is in Visalia.
Sorry?
Visalia, California. That's we are 3 hours south of here, and we're 2 hours north of Bakersfield. So it's a ag town in the middle of the Central Valley.
It's in the Central Valley.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. It's so Fresno. Are you aware of Fresno?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, an hour south of that.
I know Kaweah area very well.
Okay, yeah.
But you mentioned now working with the mobile unit that you're going to come in contact with a lot of young people.
Correct.
And I'm wondering, when you come in contact with these young people, do you share your story?
No, that's something different. That would be no. If no, that wouldn't be because in those situations that would not help that situation. You know, it's not like I'm working with adults in recovery or something to that effect. Um, yeah, that's something that I don't do with those clients, you know. If anything, you know, like I know I have disclosed like with clients that are resistant to therapy, like saying, hey, therapy is something that's positive, you know, because if they're having one case in particular, he was very hesitant about going to therapy, but then I disclosed, hey, you know, that's something that a lot of us in the profession do. You know, sometimes we need therapy in order to kind of work out on things, and that helped them, you know, accept therapy. We referred him, and he's in therapy now. But I don't disclose that specific thing. I think that
I mean, I'm just curious because young people are in that area are very, very susceptible, and it's quite dangerous for them.
right.
And I would think if they hear from someone they respect,
That would totally be in the context of what the situation is, but I haven't done so, and I don't. Yeah, that would be a little different. If anything, I do share about the importance of getting more insight by attending therapy. You know, I have disclosed that. You know, my own personal experience with that with some of these high risk kids that are resistant, and to help them understand that you know therapy is not a bad thing. But as far as for like the substance abuse, I mean the alcohol abuse stuff, I haven't disclosed that level.
thank you.
Dr. Boyd?
Hi, thank you. I just have one question that maybe you can help me understand a little bit more. So I know you talked a little bit about how you have really valued the structure of the AA work you're doing now. And I think you spoke to this a little bit, but I'm curious, you know, with that, I think I heard you correctly that there's a level of accountability that comes with that work. How do you see that same type of accountability playing out in other aspects of your life in terms of, let's just say that the board does decide to terminate your probation early, how would that play out in other areas?
Okay. Well, to answer that question, that's why we do the ongoing steps in 10 to 11. Are we still doing what we need to do? We need to do to be true to the 12 steps. You know, here it talks about it says, remember, we're not cured of alcoholism, so we do not let up on our spiritual program of action. We maintain our spiritual condition to receive our daily reprieve from alcoholism. Every day we must carry the vision of God's will into our activities. Think constantly, how can I best serve thee? Thy will, not mine, be done. Pretty much 10 and 11 is a constant reminder of where we're at and what we need to do. So couple that with being in Bridge Street and helping being a step guide, because when you're a step guide, you're basically really, you're redoing the steps yourself because you're helping to clarify the steps that they're doing. So it's a constant reminder. And to be honest, like there's a part of me that I feel like I want to go through the steps again myself, and just so I can be better at explaining stuff to people again. They always tell us I tend to be a perfectionist with things, and I know that a lot of people tell me, hey, don't worry, you'll do fine. But I really want to get this down. So I was even thinking about just going through the steps again with my sponsor, just so I could be better service for being a step guide, because this stuff it's a lot of information, and there's a lot of meaning behind these paragraphs. Somebody that's been in it for many years, like my sponsor Teddy, it's incredible how he can break this down and make everything, he explains everything and it makes sense. So for me, say if the board were to grant me early termination, this is the stuff that continues to keep me on track, is just being part of that community, part of Bridge Street, and continuing to do the work.
Ms. Cazares Willis?
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for sharing your story. Between all of the questions, I feel like I don't have a question for you, but thank you.
Thank you. And Dr. Walker?
And thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Davalos, thank you for your testimony. I have no questions.
All right, well, thank you. Ms. Crawford, anything further?
I have just a couple points of clarification.
All right.
So the Bridge Street group, your attendance there is separate from your attendance at AA meetings?
No, that is
It is the AA.
Yes.
Okay. And when your attendance at AA meetings was granted, your petition was granted to attend just one AA meeting per week.
And that's Bridge Street.
That was Bridge Street.
Correct.
So do you attend Bridge Street currently just once a month or once a week?
Yes.
Okay. And your biological fluid tests, you had asked back in, I believe it was September of 2021 during your petition hearing, you had asked that those be reduced to one time a month,
Correct.
and that was denied.
Yes, it was denied.
So you're still testing 4 times a month?
Correct.
Okay, and your therapy, you also asked that therapy end at that point, and
Correct.
that was granted.
Correct, it was.
So since May of 2022, when therapy ended, the order for therapy ended, did you continue on with therapy to address the loss of your job?
Yeah, so what happened is that, yes, therapy ended. I was granted, the ALG granted termination of therapy, but then at the beginning of this year, I believe, is when I felt like, you know what, I'm going to go back.
Okay.
I'm going to go back because I just still had this, I missed the hospital, and then sometimes I would go over there on a crisis call. I'd see everybody there still, like the environment, my brother works there. So I missed the camaraderie of it. It's a whole different, just as a whole different atmosphere. So I was like, you know what, this is still kind of bugging me. I need to go back. So I sought therapy, and that's when I did EMDR for a while. And then that brought up other stuff that I was like, okay, I didn't know that was a thing. EMDR is incredible.
Are you still in therapy?
Yeah, then after I finished with the EMDR, I'm seeing somebody else, and we're doing DBT work.
And that is what?
Dialectical behavior therapy.
Okay.
It's just kind of, learning to forgive, radical acceptance, with certain things, mostly career-wise.
And is there a reason you didn't submit some information from your therapy work to the board as part of your package?
You know what? By the time I had submitted this, no, I just didn't. I had just barely started.
You had barely
Well,
started therapy?
Well, the EMDR was just short term. I just didn't think to include it, to be honest with you. I'm just doing this on my own.
Thank you. That was all I needed to clarify.
All right, thank you, Ms. Crawford. Mr. Davalos, I think I join with everyone up here in saying I appreciate your candor and your testimony today. As with the other petitions, the board will deliberate in closed session later today. A decision will issue within 30 days, and you'll be notified of that in the future, okay?
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Good luck to you.
Thank you.
With that, the matter is submitted, record is closed, we are off the record.
All right, thank you, Judge. So that brings us to our lunch break. Are we okay with 45 minutes? Does that work? Or not?
Well, lunch is not going to be.
Oh,
I think we should do it.
Do it.
you want to?
You're the next person.
Yeah, we have another case. Do you want to take a quick 5-minute break and then move to the other case, or do people need some time? No, that's fine. That's fine.
Oh, just,
2 o'clock.
So what do you want to, what would make the most sense? It'll be here 1:30. Okay, so then if we take the hour,
yeah.
well, our stenographer needs a court reporter. Yeah, let's take the hour. Yeah, let's do that. So we'll reconvene at 1:55.